So, revolutionary greetings, comrades. You're most welcome. This is Comrade Pidgin Dimwengu. Of course, I speak from a colonial territory called Kenya, and I'm here actually to welcome you all to our class, Consciousness Study Group, and to appreciate your the work you are doing in regards to helping the continent, and also in regards to actually promoting what is necessary and relevant to change this continent. We as Conscious in Study class are a group of course, Africans and progressive Pan-Africans who are trying to study the philosophy and ideology of Kwame Nkrumah in order to learn how we can implement it in for the purpose of decolonizing Africa, African liberation, African unification, and African development. So we actually call upon this conference for 2 days, and it is the Radical Pan-African Conference, which is either Progressive Pan-African Conference, in order to check on what are the necessities that must actually take place in order for Africa to be fully liberated, fully unified, and fully developed. And therefore, we, of course, allotted various speakers to speak on various topics. And so far, the first day topics were discussed, and here are the resolutions. People from that conference, in day one conference on Thursday 7, recommended that African states need to revert to their original names, i.e. continent name and name of other features in Africa like lakes, mountains, and going back to the original appellation of the continent. Others, of course, also identify greed as a serious issue within the leadership of Africa, and they say that greed of some of our individual leaders also need to be called out, especially how our political leaders are amassing wealth of Africa in intense number. Some also, of course, propose that we need to come up with an Afrocentric system in all our spheres of life, from politics, leadership, and economics. Some also proposed and recommended the need for self-love, patriotism, and Afrocentricity to be inculcated in early ages in our kids. Building of national or African consciousness through Afrocentric education, languages, philosophy, and governance were also proposed. Teaching our own Pan-Africans at home, our African history, and not to water down our history or foreign history. Africa has also to have its own revolution. The economy of Africa is the strongest in the world, but it is benefiting the wider world at the great cost of the African. Revolution will help Africans to take back control of their own destiny. Adopt purely Afrocentric governance system, have robust advocacy work on reclaiming Africa, decolonization of the mind, and depolarization. Radical action against new colonizers, restore the African identity, advocate for removal of African or foreign militarism across Africa. Change in the curriculum is also a must. Have an umbrella conference to regroup, share concepts, protocol, and reasoning. Create a system that motivates cooperativism and collectivism. Our founding fathers have shown us the way. All we have to do is to copy and paste it. We have a blueprint. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to stop whining or wrangling our hands and ask, what do we do when we have a blueprint? Redefining and upgrading the values of African lives and humanity, political system being Afrocentric, resolving wars in Africa, geopolitics and international relations with other nations, tackle hunger and malnutrition, healthcare, electricity, industrialization of water, infrastructure, miseducation of Africans, African financials, accommodation, etc. Collective healing to rediscover our African consciousness and Ubuntu. African leadership program must also be resolved the fundamental issues. Political program that see leaders as servants who will go not to sleep unless the people's problems are solved. Economically, Africa must embrace the science of physical economy, which include activity using natural resources with the people, creativity, ability to produce products that Africans consume. Cultural, spirituality, and socially, to embrace our African philosophy, Ubuntu, in all aspects of our relationship and policies, enhancement of our African spirituality across the world, and announce the 10 principles proposed by Sierra Institute in the net shared, and also somebody actually shared to us the Machiavelli the Prince, the 4 stages of colonial blueprint, which is the entry with armies and administration, the creation of an elite class that is elevated, the political control, the economic exploitation, which is now the stage we are in. We must also learn common law, Moorish law, the commercial law, which they are using to draw down money in our names. We need the learning about their banking scam system. How do they use the color of law they use today? And also the people and the government. They are missing dots. The missing dots are causing more issues than even we realize. Mental health, health food, we are also lost, and we lost our heritage and it's time now to reclaim it. We must create our banking economy backed by our gold, unify our currency, and also with the education programs, Africa should consider online programs so that they can prepare and spread and spare the expense of mobility. So, comrades, these are some of the actually resolutions that were proposed in our previous class. That was in our previous conference that took place on Thursday. And we are actually looking forward to this day too. And our intention is actually to ensure that after this, we can produce a blueprint that can then lead us to having either committees or subcommittees at any level possible so that we can actually start moving forward. Because it's very important from next year, if possible, we must produce a blueprint on the end of the year on what is the manual or African manual on governance, what's the African manual on spirituality, what's our manual on education, what's our manual on economics, and all this must be put into documents that can even then result to what you call the African Constitution, that then can be pushed forward to be adopted for the purpose of elevating the livelihood and the life of Africans. And this will call upon now combining forces of those who are either doing African spirituality being brought together, start working on something. By the end of 2024, we produce something that can be a guidance and a direction for the continent. So once again, comrades, thank you for your attendance today and feel most welcome to join us today so that you can move forward together with our programs in regards to the actual liberation of Africa, development of Africa, and unification of Africa. Without wasting much time, and I'm seeing also time is moving, I'll just go straight to actually call upon the first speaker who is with us today so that he can move ahead to share with us what he calls the African Rapid Development Plan. Mr. Kwame Gonza is one of the strong Pan-African and a very positive, reactionary, and progressive Pan-African who has done a lot in all fields of African to help Africa move to where it's supposed to be. I'll permit him to actually get in, introduce himself first, share a bit what he's doing, and then get us straight to the point and to the topic of African Rapid Development Plan. Kwame Gonza, kindly feel most welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. And everyone who's on the platform. I'm not new to the consortium class. I've been part of it. As he has mentioned, my name is Kwame Gonza, and I'm part of the Africa Continental Unity Party currently. And currently, I'm also working on a project called the Africa Railway Triangle Network Master Plan. This project, I have presented it already to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. I was at the Secretariat recently, where I went, I wrote and they invited me, and I went there to discuss this project and how it can be from the African continent. So they invited me and I went and I did my part. It is a $100 billion project, and that project has a capacity of generating up to $1 trillion in itself. If we invest around $1 billion, it has the capacity of generating up to $1 trillion. For trade alone, it could elevate Africa's trade by $200 billion every year. And then if you go to tourism, about $350 billion. So it is a big project that could, do a lot of stuff for us. But they looked through it and I presented it. We are somewhere currently and we are still waiting on them. So that is that. But my topic today that has been assigned to me is industrialization.
Nice one. Congratulations.
The topic which has been assigned to me today is about the transformation, the Rapid Africa Transformation plan for us to be able to leapfrog everyone or catch up with in the world, the rest of the parts of the world which have already advanced. I believe that we need a very strong and rapid transformation plan for the whole African continent. And what I mean by rapid is that plan is supposed to recognize the fact that the rest of the world has developed, but in this process of development, they have used certain pieces of knowledge over a period of time. If you go back from the first industrial revolution, which happened in Britain, and to the second industrial revolution, which happened in the United States, and even right now, what is called the third industrial revolution, which is happening in China, for us to be able to catch up with that. I recognize the fact that many people think that we are in the fourth industrial revolution because this is the narrative that has been thrown around, especially from the World Economic Forum and the West. But we are not really in the fourth industrial revolution. We are in the third industrial revolution. That is what we are entering in. And it is being led by China right now. So for Africa to catch up in that, we need a plan. And of course, it doesn't necessarily mean that we jump into the third industrial revolution and even lead it. But at least if we are to lead the next industrial revolution, maybe the fourth industrial, then it means we as Africans also need to start seriously and need to start working now. Now, the industrial revolutions have the period of transformation of nations has reduced drastically. If you go back to Britain and Europe, the time it took them to transform their society, it took them 600 years for them to transform their society, to bring it where now. If you go back to the 15th century, when they came here and they were suffering and they had all kinds of problems. And if you go to the United States, in the second industrial revolution, it took them actually much less, because in the United States, they copied some of the technologies from Europe, and they used this to transform their society. And for them, it took them even much less, about half of the time which it took Europe, which is around 300 years, less than actually 300 years in the United States. Now, if you come to newcomers who are jumping onto the modernization, wagon, you talk of the Asian tigers, which have been spoken about, Singapore, you talk of China, you can talk of Taiwan, South Korea, all these countries, it actually for them took them even much less. Look at countries like, say, like less than 30 years, even China, less than 30 years. 30 years ago, China was an agricultural country which was poor, but today, leading, is the industrial powerhouse of the world because it has all types of industries. Now, they did, of course, certain things. There is things which led China to jump up and become the second biggest economy right now, or even to be the leading economy in the world when it comes to GDP in power terms. China currently is the biggest economy in the world. Now, they did certain things, of course. So we as Africans, we need that kind of plan in order for us to transform our continent. Now, that plan is supposed to look at the fact that the time for transforming nations has reduced. So now what this means is that we have to act quickly, and we have to use the knowledge that has been accumulated over these long periods of time since the 15th century, which we mentioned already, the first industrial revolution of Britain, what America has used, and then what China has used, China knowledge, and put it together to be able to transform their territory. So we target, like one of the things which we are trying to integrate with the Africa Continental Unity Party is the understanding, because the Africa Continental Unity Party, which I belong, is trying to mobilize the whole African continent and then take power. What it calls creating a power base is trying to create a power base for the African people and then set the stage for this particular transformation. Now, for me, what I think I'm trying to contribute to the Africa Continental Unity Party is to show how we will be able to transform this continent when we get that power, when we have accomplished the process of creating the power base, because you can do whatever you want, but if you don't have power, there's no way you can transform the continent. So I hope everyone understands that. Now, it means that we need to mobilize all Africa's resources, human capital, whatever it is, the so-called factors of, or some of you who have been to school to study about economics know what they call the factors of production. The factors of production now have to be mobilized all over the African continent, and of course, in an environmental friendly way. And then they have to be deployed and in a rapid manner. And some of those are the capital which we have as Africans, which is around $3.5 trillion of GDP as a continent, which makes Africa around the sixth biggest economy in the world. If you look at Africa, we should not be begging anyone because we already have the capital. Our economy is the sixth biggest. We could be even part of the G7. If you look at G7 countries, they are giving. But because our heads of state do not understand that they already have what they need, then they go around the world begging and then, embarrassing us, all across the world, and people insulting us as Africans. We have what we need, but it's because the heads of state do not understand what they already, hence they cause all this embarrassment to the African people. Now, the SU understands these facts, and that is why it is coming to mobilize the people. The second aspect is the labor, which we spoke about, we've spoken about repeatedly, and the source of that labor is the people itself, 1.5 billion people on the African continent. 1.5 billion people is the source of labor at the same time which you need to transform society. If you look at China, one of the reasons why China has been able to leapfrog everyone because of the big population. And one of the things which Nkrumah understood in the 1960s, before he mobilized his contemporaries, and some of them, they refused to join him, is that the era of small nations powerful on the global stage and not being subservient or turned into satellites. Because you can be rich, you can be a rich country like Japan, you can be a rich country like South Korea, but if you don't have a bigger population, you can't be a superpower. You can attain wealth, but you cannot be powerful. You will still be controlled by countries like the United States, and you will still be a satellite. You will still not have power because you cannot defend yourself against these bigger nations. So these are some of the things which Nkrumah understood in the 60s, that we have to move rapidly. So this is where we have a problem with people keep rationalizing about this on the African continent. Now, that is number two. When it comes to population, we have around 1.4 billion people. So these are the resources which we have that I'm trying to show you. Now, when we talk about material resources, on the other, also we have around $700 trillion of material resources in the ground. We know Democratic Republic of Congo around, they have estimated that is around $80 trillion. Just the Democratic Republic of Congo, South Africa alone, Zimbabwe, I think Zimbabwe alone, they have estimated that it is around $18 trillion. So these two countries can see is in the ground. So if you take stock of all the African continent, we estimate that there could be around $700 trillion, which we have in Africa. So this is enough money for us to transform our society. in a period of less than 20 years to a GDP, at least a GDP of $22,000. That makes us a developed country, as you know, continent. It makes us a developed country because developed countries, they look at $20,000. Just to show you that this is very possible. In Gabon alone, right now, the GDP, per capita in Gabon is around $14,000. So when we talk about $22,000 per capita for Africa, the whole African continent, this is not out of place. And in 20 years, some of the countries on the continent have already achieved half of that. Sudan.
Yeah, you are having next 5 minutes, which of course I would wish to try to engage you on some few questions to direct in regards to your plan.
Okay,
you talk of Rapid African Development Plan. You have mentioned the labor, you have mentioned the resources, what the population, what else are those factors of the Rapid Development Plan? Then I will engage and ask you, I see you mentioned Gabon, and we know very well, of course, as Gabon is doing well in terms of GDP. In my recent research, I realized that Burundi is having a poverty rate close to 92%. And also, you check very well that the report that was released in 2016, London Stock Exchange, where London companies are actually controlling our minerals and exploiting our minerals close to $1 billion, over $1 trillion. So the question is, how do we think we can reconnect to that which they are controlling in terms of mineral, oil, and those other natural resources? And also, how do we deal with the issues like what is going on in Burundi in terms of poverty? Thank you. Let me proceed. In the next 5 minutes.
Yes. So those resources I mentioned, these are the major resources which we have, which we need to mobilize. But when you are talking about controlling the outflow of resources so that they can stop appearing on the London Stock Exchange or to combat poverty, poverty is not a problem. What the problem is the lack of power and the lack of sovereignty. If you have sovereignty, which the SCUP already is working on, the issue of the power base, then you have the power to solve the poverty issue. So the poverty is just a symptom of lack of power and lack of sovereignty. And it goes on, to the same, to explain the same thing which you mentioned here, the appearance of Africa's minerals on the London Stock Exchange, the mines, or whether it is the New York Stock Exchange, is because there's no sovereignty, and this is explained by the lack of power. So all these are just the symptoms. These are just symptoms, whatever you are mentioning, poverty, corruption, these are all lack of sovereignty, and that is what the Africa Continental Unity Party is trying to solve fast. Because before you solve that, you cannot start saying you are going to fight poverty, you are going to fight miseducation, because you don't have sovereignty, the continent. So all this plan which I'm talking about, of the plan of mobilizing these three, important resources which I mentioned, it is hinged on getting sovereignty and getting power. Then when you look at these resources that have to be mobilized, then you can say that what are we with? We understand that for an industrial revolution to occur, you need three technologies. At least if you read a book called The Third Industrial Revolution by Jeremy Rifkin, you need transport, you need communication technology, and then you need energy, you need control over energy. And of course, these days they have been talking about clean energy, been hearing energy wars, Middle East, because energy is very important, as part of, of driving an economy or driving an industrial revolution. So then you mobilize this. That is why of these three technologies, for me, what I've put on right now, which I can do,
40 minutes.
Please, can you mute yourself? So everyone is supposed to do whatever they can do in their power where they are. Currently, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is ongoing. They have a problem that they can't move goods from one part of the continent, but they are talking about trade. They don't have the basic infrastructure. So I came to a conclusion that we need this plan. So I reached out to them. But this in itself is not merely helping the AFCFTA, which is the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, but the whole continent. Even when we unify the continent, definitely we need a unified, transport system. We need a communication system. And of course, this railway project, which I'm talking about, it will be the basis for establishing also a communication system. Because if you lay the tracks, then along the tracks, you will lay a fiber optic cable, which will connect the whole African continent onto one communication network. And those are the two important technologies which you need in an industrial revolution. And then, of course, you can transport energy resources from Mozambique, Africa, and all in the middle of the continent, transport agricultural produce from to the west, and transport what you need from the west to the east. So that is the whole plan. So the grand plan, which is the Rapid Africa Transformation Plan, that is how it looks like. And for me, what I'm doing currently, and the party to which I belong to, which is the Africa Continental Unity Party, that is what we are doing to try to create that balance in the next maybe 10 to 15 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. That's indeed wonderful. And I'll request you probably, if you can drop in the chat box as we did before, so that you can collect the recommendations, probably in African Rapid Development Plan. Drop on our chat box some of the key stages or key factors that are necessary or are important towards that development plan. Of course, on the SUP party, we know we have invited Kabbalah to come on board to share with us about SUP. And once he's here, we'll be able also to see how we engage him on that in regards as having a mass party. Now we will be moving forward to Brother Sifue, who will actually be sharing with us more about reparation, restitution, and repatriations. And the key issue why we put this on board, of course, we know very well that they need to be repaired for whatever happened to us as a people. But also, as I've learned of recent, is that repatriations both must engage the slavery period, the colonialism period, and the neo-colonialism period. Because majority of us feel that reparations are only concerned to the slave period of our brothers who are stolen from Africa, but also the damages made by the colonialism need to be repaired. The damages that are still going on by neo-colonialism, as I've mentioned, some of course, those foreign mining companies that are still exploiting our minerals and actually affecting our environment and other climatical issues, must also repair that, including even the current multinational companies that are still controlling our continent. So it's a wider thing, but I really want us to get to Brother Sifue to introduce himself, tell us what has been the struggles and the journeys for reparations for the people of Black or Africans, and what are actually the next plans that are necessary, what must be done in order as a continent or as a country or as a people to attain what you want in terms of reparation, restitution, and repatriation. Thank you very much, Brother Sifue. Kindly introduce yourself. The floor is yours and proceed. Elder Sifue, I don't know if he's around. Let me check again. He was around. Okay. It seems Sifue might have left a bit when his microphone was on. But I know he will be coming back. He ought to be the next speaker. But we will move to the other speaker, who is also online, so that Sifue will join us after that speaker. The next speaker, of course, got also to be Brother Kabbalah from SUP. Unless he's here, he should let me know whether he's here. But I see Brother Nri from Nigeria always to talk to us about Continental Passport or Continental Common Document. And Brother Nri has said something in the chat, and permit me to allow him to come forth and introduce himself and share with us in regards to that topic.
Greetings, kings and queens. Sorry, Chair. I am standing in for King Kabbalah. This is Mfanelo Ndlovu from South Africa.
Okay, you're standing in for King Kabala, which means
That's correct.
you have to present the third topic on
The mass
party.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then allow me to start it off officially in regards to this topic. The intention for us, of course, to bring this topic of mass party on board in regards to this debate today is to ensure that, of course, as per the guidance of, Thomas Sankara, after winning the popular revolutionary uprising in Burkina Faso, towards the days before he was actually assassinated, he recommended that actually there's a need for a mass party to protect and safeguard revolution. But apart from that, Kwame Nkrumah also proposed for the organization of a mass party. Remember, he formed All African Revolutionary Party, and he insisted that in order for revolution to be successful, it must be moved to the masses. In the name of the mass party, we look towards the number, the quantity of the masses. I know there are so many challenges, of course, the presentation will have to explore to us that as the setup of an African context today, I believe there's no continental body in AU that can actually register a continental political party as a one certification. And rather, such mass parties are forced now to go into country states to register in different countries. And such is forming another different countries' political party. The Ghana political party, mass party, Ghana, South Africa mass party, and even EFF has been struggling again also to move even their party to other jurisdictions, because there's a lack of continental approach that can actually certify and register one party and one mass party for the whole continent. And these are the challenges that we are actually alive to, and the challenges that I know SUP as trying to be a mass party for the Africa is facing, because now they might be subjected to register in different countries, which some of those countries might be having their challenges, either legal challenges or technical challenges. And then in the end of the day, we don't achieve a whole continental political party, the whole continental structure, but rather you'll have now each and different countries either forming a copy or forming a template of the same political party. The mobilization at a continental level will still be having a challenge, as some are facing, including even All African Revolutionary Political Party, the Pan-African Congress of South Africa, and so many other political parties. But allow me actually to give this floor to Mfanelo, who is from African Continental Unity Party, to introduce himself and tell us how the African Continental Unity Party look forward being that mass party for the country. Welcome, comrade.
Greetings, kings and queens. It is an honor and a privilege to have this discussion with all of you. We are all in the journey. In fact, this is long overdue. It's as old as Marcus Garvey, who initiated the Pan-Africanism concept to look at Africa nationalizing and becoming one nation, especially for her people and people in the diaspora. And, Nkwame, President Nkwame, he followed from those footsteps to actually bring this dream into reality. And hence they organized the African Union, as it was known back then, Organization of African Unity, 1963. So we know that heads of state then had to debate how long do they want Africa to unite? Is it a matter of agency? They want it now? Or, should we wait for it? So there was division in the heads of states of Africa then, because there was too much influence from external forces. Now we find ourselves many years from 1963 with a body, African Union, that keeps promising this dream to bring it into reality. But what is happening then in reality is that it keeps shifting. So it was 1963, now it's 2063. Next time it's going to be Vision 3063. And if you are my age, where will you be in 2063? So we want to enjoy and celebrate the unity of Africa now within this decade. And that is the one mandate that African, Continental Unity Party is pursuing. So we realize that the tactic of us accelerating this dream, this desire, is that we can't do it alone. We have to collaborate. We carry this vision burns. Pan-Africanism lives and burns in all the sons and daughters of this continent. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in the Caribbean, whether you in diaspora, whether you in any of these nations. There's never been a time where the generation has been prepared in numbers. And thanks to technology, we are able to engage at speed. We are able to, have these platforms where we are talking across the continent with each other. So there's never been a right time like it is now to mobilize ourselves and reorganize ourselves as the continent. If there's anything in our favor, is that the time is right, and simply because, as King Gonza has just presented, not only that, our fathers were disadvantaged greatly to pull this through. They did not have the technology to do it. Neither did they have the expertise, the knowledge to do it at the time. But today, it's unique that by, default, we see that the world is ripe. First, we know there is global shift of political power. We know that, Europe as we know it is done, it's declining, it has come to an end to be the global superpower with America, her allies. We know there's a winds of change, the East is coming strong, now we have different alliances, we've got BRICS to our favor, which means these are bodies of international organization that are saying, we want a transition, we want a multipolar world, we want it in a peaceful manner. China has demonstrated that it's possible for a people to move themselves from poverty into an industrialized economy and global superpower without firing a single bullet. So of course, as ACUP, we have then given ourselves a mandate, exactly as you've said. We are pursuing registration in all the local 55 nations, comply with local requirements of those environments. I mean, I'm sitting in South Africa. We are looking at IEC requirements for campaigning for national elections. And all of us then need to mobilize from nation to nation. And then we are carrying the same banner, we are carrying the same brand as Ghana is doing now, contesting 2024 elections. So we feel and we believe that all of us, all the Pan-African organizations sitting in each of these 54 nations, needs to organize themselves first within the nations they are sitting in, to collaborate with the existing political parties and make some alliances, especially with all the political parties that are pro-Pan-African. We need to realize that we need to unite. We cannot be divided anymore. We cannot allow division. So we need to forget the banners of each of us's many different names, political parties, and realize we all represent the same people. We represent sons and daughters of this continent. So all of us have to be prepared to go behind closed doors, just like, the Berlin Conference did. People went behind closed doors and they put their pride aside, their nationalism aside, and they said, guys, we don't have to kill each other. The world is big. Let's unite. That's the only way we can take Africa. Now, sons and daughters of Africa, this is what we are hoping to do as ACUP. We are hoping to start these conversations where in South Africa, we collaborate with many political organizations that believe they are representing the interests of our people. We want Ghana to do the same thing. We want Zimbabwe to do the same thing. We want Nigeria to do the same thing. All of us, if we do this, we will put pressure in the current heads of states. And if we do that, we will also put pressure by default in African Union. There's already an infrastructure for our unity. We already have it. And there's already budget, there's already funding from the heads of state, from African Union bodies. So all we need to do as Pan-Africanists is not to march anymore to tell other people to take our interest at heart, but it is that we deploy a man in those offices. So we want to put Pan-Africanists in parliament of all these 54 nations. We want to put Pan-Africanists because the more we win the SADC and we win the next block, we win the next block, that means we will eventually win African Union. And therefore, we will have enough votes to change all the policies and all the constitutions that needs to be changed to bring the dream of a united Africa now. You know, we want to throw everything within the next 6 years, starting 7 years, starting from now, 2023 to 2030. We want to mobilize aggressively in all the 54 nations, even galvanize diaspora bases presence there to also put pressure in their governments where they sit. You know, we need those that are in America, put pressure in their political offices. Those who are in China do the same, so that eventually on a global arena, Africa is allowed to unite. Africa is allowed to have a single currency, single head of state, single military, and single, no borderless, no visa. You know, we can freely move, we can freely trade, and we can defend ourselves and protect the territories of Africa. This is the mandate that we are pushing for. So perhaps I'm going to just, the way we are going through it, there are 3 distinct areas that we need a solution. So we obviously need a political solution, and this is what I'm talking into. And what King Gonza just spoke into, it's an economic solution where we need to build our own brands, build our own industries, build our own banks, and that brings us to Ubuntu solidarity in terms of a different economy, you know, that includes most families across the continent and diaspora. And then, of course, we need a social solution because we've got a young continent with amazing talent. You know, the median age of the continent is 19 years and younger. That means more than 50% of this continent, they're really young. And safely, you can say 70% of our population is below the age of 40. So that means if we want to change this continent, we do have to engage every talent, every young person that is within the shores of our continent and engage their talent and their skills, as King Gonza has highlighted, that is our brains, that is our expertise, that is our IP. We need to have our own IPs and invest in that talent to release and build industries in that way. So those are the 3 focus areas ACUP is pursuing. So I'm going to pause there just to allow then questions and suggestions because I'm aware that we were given about 15 minutes to engage.
Thank you very much for that, and we really appreciate what you're doing. We will be having questions and answers once we finish the presentation time. Then we actually will allow members on an open floor to ask questions from first presenter to the last presenter. Then we can have time to engage in answer and maybe building up on what we are discussing. Because I believe that we are a team to build up on actually a better continent, despite of so many projects we are pursuing, despite of so many ideas we are running. But at the end of the day, we are pro-African for pro-continental build-up. So we will give space for other members to ask that question, but after we done with the presentation part. So permit me to request Elder Sifiwe, and thank you very much, Comrade, for standing in for Comrade Kabala. Elder Sifiwe, kindly come in and give us your introduction and what is needed or what should be done in regards to reparations. Thank you very much. Welcome, Comrade.
Abene, thank you. Kumama, welcome. Revolutionary Pan-African greetings to everyone, and a special thank you to the moderator. My name is Sipiwe Boleka. I happen to be the head of research and strategy for the Pan-African Federalist Movement West Africa region. I also serve as the coordinator for the 8th Pan-African Congress Part 1 that is called by Her Excellency Ambassador Arikana Chihombori Kwao. And I am the drafter of the harmonization plan that is being worked on as we speak to harmonize the 3 Pan-African Congresses that have been called and will be hosted in 2024. The first being that of the one called by Ambassador Arikana Chihombori Kwao that is scheduled for Zimbabwe. The second is the one called by the Global Pan-African Movement out of Kampala, Uganda. And the third is the 9th Pan-African Congress that's being called out of Togo. I'm the coordinator of the Lineage Restoration Movement, which is a movement of 800,000 people that have taken the African ancestry DNA test and discovered their maternal or paternal lineage on the continent. And I have my hand in a lot of other matters regarding the African Union 6th region, the African diaspora, our right to return. And that leads me to my subject tonight to speak on reparations. I recently returned from the Accra Reparations Conference that was held a few weeks ago, hosted by the President of Ghana. Now, a couple of key points. When we say reparations, we're talking about the legal concept of reparations has 2 components. You have the right of the victim of an injury to receive reparations, and then 2, you have the duty of the party responsible to provide redress. Within the reparations movement, we talk about external reparations. That is everything that is owed by the guilty parties that needs to be provided. And then we talk about internal reparations. Those are the things that we do for ourselves. And the root word of reparations is repair. And so the question is, repair what? When we talk about reparations, we talk about repair for the damages and injury of a crime. So what was the crime that we're talking about when we talk about reparations? One of the things I asked at the conference, and I was surprised and shocked, most of our community cannot name the crime or when it occurred, like actually when it started. What we're talking about is the crime for the Dum Diversis War. On June 18th, 1452, Pope Nicholas V issued an apostolic edict. That's an official decree that claims its authority directly from Jesus Christ through the apostolic line. Pope Nicholas V issued this apostolic edict granting authority to the King of Portugal to invade, fight, conquer, subjugate, take possession of, and reduce to perpetual servitude the people in the land of Guinea. This is the actual start of a war. The declaration is a declaration of war. And then the West Coast was invaded, first by Portugal, and then later on by other nations that held a monopoly asiento contract with the Catholic Church. This war lasted over 500 years and ended in 1994 when South Africa declared its independence and ended the apartheid regime. So what we're talking about is injury and damages for war crimes, okay? Quite often, and up till recently, we have talked about the slave trade, but a narrative created by the Europeans to misrepresent the character of what happened to African people. What happened to African people is that European nations used army, navy, advanced weaponry, invaded our lands, and initiated warfare. And a particular category of warfare that under the law is called total warfare. Total warfare is a category of war that doesn't distinguish between combatants and civilians. So when the invasion happened, you had men, women, and children going about their normal daily activities. And if you read the firsthand accounts of the very first contact between the Portuguese ships that invaded West Africa and the people that were living in these territories, the actual battles are described. And so what we're talking about is combat. So the first point I want to emphasize is that the global reparatory justice movement for African people, we have to change the narrative from a slave trade to warfare and prisoners of war. The vast majority of people that were captured and trafficked across the Atlantic and then subjected to chattel enslavement and ethnocide were not slaves. They had not been enslaved when they were trafficked. They had not been enslaved when the Europeans invaded the territories. So there's a movement underway now to correct the narrative to an African-centered narrative that says, look, total war was declared. And the first crime that was committed in what we, in our ignorance, call the slave trade, actually happened on the African continent. And the primary and the first victims and the largest victims were people on the African continent, because for every person that was taken to a prison and held as a prisoner of war and trafficked to the Americas and enslaved, for everyone that survived that, there were like 9 or 10 others that didn't and died before even embarking on a ship. So therefore, one of the things that is coming out of this global African reparatory justice movement, and that was discussed at the recent ACRA Reparations conference, was changing the narrative so that it, one, is historically accurate and talks about damages or reparations for war crimes, for total war, and changing the language from talking about slaves to talking about prisoners of war who were subjected to chattel enslavement, which is a unique form of slavery that never before existed, and that was created by Europeans, that resulted in ethnocide. So you have the claims of those victims who never even left Africa. Those families lost family members. Those communities were impacted, severely impacted. You lost labor, you lost expertise, human resources. And then you have those people who were captured, survived the Middle Passage and enslaved, and some of us, like myself, those defended. And what we need to do at this point is to have a unified global African reparations movement that understands and how to use legal language to bring claims under binding treaties. Now, the United Nations was not created by us for us. It's still a colonial project. We all understand. Quite often get asked, why are we even bothering trying to bring a claim, engaging the United Nations, trying to engage the International Court of Justice, all of those things? We all know that those are colonial projects and neo-colonial successors. But there are legitimate arenas where some bids can be had. And going back to Comrade Kwame's original point, we don't have a single African nation that possesses positive sovereignty. We have African nations that have negative sovereignty. And until we develop a continental positive sovereignty, we won't have the means to enforce reparations, even if we were to get a favorable verdict by the highest court on the planet, which is the International Court of Justice. One of the issues in the reparations movement, and I say at the time, the difference between and demanding is demanding comes with a consequence, and or else. And Africa has yet to identify and be able to provide a united Ubuntu or else. You either pay reparations or else this is going to be happening. One of the suggestions for that or else is, for example, if we had, yeah, I'll wrap it up. I'll make this point and wrap it up.
You can switch off
Just
your
an
camera so that you know that the usage of your
Switch
battery,
off,
because you're disappearing a bit. Just switch off your camera and then you proceed.
Okay,
It can help you.
hopefully that's better now. Okay. One example of an or else that speaks to the point that we're all gathered for, right, is manifesting this sovereignty that we need. Suppose the members of the African Union, or alternatively, a United African States, where
Sorry for that. I know he has left us because it was indicating that his network was not sure or not correct, but I know he'll be coming back later if that will allow. But yes, he's talking about reparations, and we still have some 6 minutes to discuss that. But I know he'll come back and continue that. Really, there has been that narrative that the reparations has actually been staged back to slavery, or that period of either enslavement. But the reparations has been so quiet in the continent, especially in regards to the countries demanding for reparations, especially to the countries that were either colonies, because I believe also colonialism did serious impact and damage to African society, you see. Over the period that the colonies and controlled Africa, there's a lot of resources they took from Africa, especially to those African areas where probably there were no direct enslavements. And this also must be part of the reparations. The colonialism damages must be part of reparations. And I also believe even currently, we have also neocolonialism. So yes, comrade, can you proceed? Because you have a few minutes.
Yeah, let me see if I can. Thank you. Let me see if I can wrap it up. I was talking about an example of a consequence, an or else. If we had a continental positive sovereignty, we could say, if you don't pay the reparations in the various forms, right, you will no longer have access to the lithium, the cobalt, the gold. If we had a continental sovereignty, we could impose that. And this could be a substantial consequence that could provoke them to say it'll cost us more. So I just put that up as an example, not necessarily for us to debate, but to say the reparations movement, which is a movement for justice, it's a righteous movement that needs to be pursued. To pursue reparations does not forfeit or betray any understanding that as Pan-Africanists and as African people, we must do for ourselves, African solutions to Africans' problems. But we are in the condition that we are in today precisely because of the damages of the greatest crime against humanity. And so it is legitimate to demand and compel the guilty criminals to make reparations, to make restitution, while at the same time, we prepare for the fact that we may never get them, and we have to be able to lift ourselves based on our own human and material resources without any sort of resource transformation or transference. So let me stop there. And I want to say thank you for giving me this platform. There's a lot more I could talk about reparations, including the fact that for the first time in history, those people who suffered ethnocide, who were trafficked across the Atlantic due to technology and DNA testing, we are the first group of people in all of human history, after 6, 7, 8 or more generations, of ethnocide to be able to recover from it. I'm a living example. My family is 8 generations enslaved originally in South Carolina. After taking a DNA test and tracing my genealogy, I discovered my paternal ancestors are the Balanta people in Guinea-Bissau, where I have now repatriated and lived for 2 years. I've been to my village. I'm learning my language. I'm wearing my traditional clothing. I have reclaimed that which was taken. So it's possible. What Africa governments, people, need to understand is that we have a right of return. We need a movement, a continental reparations movement that demands that the diasporans be able to return home and obtain citizenship without any qualifications, simply because we never voluntarily renounced our birthrights to our ancestral homelands. I work in this movement that is working to get the current governments to adopt right to return policies. I have citizenship in Guinea-Bissau. We understand that this is a step towards continental citizenship for all of the diaspora, particularly the historic diaspora. So that, and establishing the diaspora as full members in the Pan-African continental sovereignty government is one of the main issues. So thank you so much, and I'll land there.
Thank you very much. I needed to ask questions, but due to time, we'll move to the next speakers, but then we will open up the floor for questions. And permit me that actually you'll be available, because I'll be asking straight, which you will answer maybe in the next question part, is whether reparations is an injustice, or is a fight for injustice that's ended, or is injustice that is continuing, to mean that whether reparations end by slavery, or either reparation must be demanded both for colonialism and neo-colonialism, because I believe the exploitation of Africa is still continuous. And how do you organize for even the current damages that are done on Africa to form part of reparation quest for African justice? But as I've said, kindly note it, then you'll come in at the question hour so that you can be able to answer to that. If that is okay with you, permit me to move straight to the next speaker, who is Niri, who is going to discuss to us on the continental documentation, to have one continental documentation. And probably here we'll be talking about the efforts to unify Africa, to have one continental, for example, passport, and even identification. And along things we're discussing, even one continental telephone line or telecommunication line. So those are the advances of the question you're asking. Brother Neri Ogwike, can he come in to give us that part of the conversation? Then I think we'll be heading towards the question side. So Neri Ogwike, kindly from Nigeria, introduce yourself and can you take on the floor?
Hello.
Yes, proceed.
Yeah, good evening, great Pan-Africans. It is a pleasure to be here once more. But before I would want to say one thing, and that one thing is, in the world of today, animals move from country to country without passport, while human beings are not allowed from country to country without passport. And it's quite unfortunate that in Africa, where we are all the same culture, the same language, the same tribe, the same color, we do it far worse than our European brothers. Good evening, my dear brothers and sisters. I would be brief in this my presentation. Reason because I was supposed to speak according to the timing from 7:05. I don't know if the mistake is from my side or from the side of the organizer or the organizing committee. So currently, I was supposed to give a report in an online meeting like this too by now, but I took an excuse.
Comrade, It is actually 7:09, which is 4 minutes past the time you're supposed to speak.
7:09.
Yeah, the meeting started 6 p.m. So it's exactly 7:09, which is only 4 minutes into your time.
Okay, from my time is 9 minutes after 8. So I don't know if Nigeria is different from every other aspect of Africa, but that's good. That's good. The reason is I'm not going to take much time. I will be very brief so as to, I wouldn't want to be your mini president. I'm not God, actually. So by introduction, my name is Henry Oguike, formerly Henry, because I discovered who I am, where I'm coming from, and where I'm going. I short it to Henry. So I'm Henry Oguike, son of Okono, son of Oguike, son of Okwaranako, son of Durugo, son of Durako, son of Achi. Achi is the son of Olu. Olu is the son of Imo. Imo is the second son of Nri. Nri is the first son of Akobe. We all know who Akobe is, which the letter J was later joined by 1600 to make it Jacob. So, but that is story of another day. So as the story goes, which we found ourselves in this part of the continent, and Nigeria was later discovered by European that conquered them. So we, the Biafrans that also found ourselves in Nigeria, fought a war between 1967 to 1970, 3.5 years war, which was later I think there was no victor, no vanquish. That was the consensus reached at the end of the day. So that's how I became a Nigerian. So when you hear Nigerian Biafra, is a story that keeps on going until we get to the destination. So I am delighted to present to you this Continental Passport as a topic. This is exactly what African Union discussed some 6-7 years ago. That's precisely 2016, right in Kigali, Rwanda, by President Paul Kagame and Idris Deby, that's the former Chadian president. This was done on the 17th day of July, where it was called African Passport. Are we there? Hello?
Sorry,
Please continue.
Sorry for that.
Oh, okay. So this discourse was based on travel documents that will allow individuals to move freely within the continent or group of countries within the continent. Actually, Africa was not supposed to be a continent. It was built and designed by the Almighty to be a country. And as we all know, this is the cradle of civilization, the cradle of humanity, and the cradle of life itself. But sometime 1884, there was a scramble for Africa. That was when all these dichotomies, that was when all these divisions were created, and we found ourselves using different telephone codes, different national and international passports, speaking different languages, calling ourselves different ethnic groups, forming different tribes, while we are all one. So, stressing down to the topic of the day, from my own side, because of time, I wouldn't want to go deep into it. I would suggest we continue to push as youths of the current day. We should continue to come together as one, because without being one, it will be difficult to actualize all these wonderful blueprints or proposals. These are the things our forefathers had in mind. These were their visions, but the few of them were sold out, collude with the West, the Europeans and Americans. Some sold out to the Arabians. That was when all these were shattered and it was not achieved. But later on, between 58 and 1963 to be precise, that was when African Union was formed. I think it was at Haile Selassie, that's Ethiopia. That was the first port of call where the African Union was formed. This is about 50 years now. So we are still having a proposal that the African Union Industrial Revolution will fully come to light in the next 50 years. That will be 100 years, which is totally off the hook. So the reason why I don't want to ponder more on this, my topic today, is it has been discussed over and over again. So I just want to go off the box, touch some vital points from every other side, which I will still be touching on this point, part by part. Now, if you look at our development in terms of inter and intra travel with our passport, we'll figure that Seychelles has the strongest passport in Africa, followed by Mauritius and South Africa. Now, let's leave South Africa aside. Seychelles, if you check, is the smallest country in Africa. Seychelles develops faster than those that thought they have more natural resources. Currently, Seychelles bound or barred some countries in Africa not to enter in their country, which Nigeria is part of them. Why do they have to do this? Because I think sometime August or July, during a meeting with Seychelles president, he said it categorically clear that he doesn't want to play along with other African leaders because they are not serious-minded. They are not serious-minded because what they were supposed to do some 10 years before now, what they were supposed to do 20 years before now, 30, 40, 50 years before now, they keep on repeating it as part of their agenda during every election. So they are no longer interested in working with other African countries. Mauritius followed suit. These small countries are building with the speed of light. They know what development is all about. So currently, as I speak, as I speak to you, dear brothers and sisters, there are African countries that travel to, let me take for instance, United Kingdom without visa. That is to show you how serious they are. These people talk by talking because they know most African leaders or even the populace talk without saying anything. Countries like Botswana, Mauritius, Namibia, Seychelles travel to United Kingdom without visa. Once you have your passport, you can travel and come back. Make your research. This is called development. This is called seriousness. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, we are left with the 4 minutes of your time, but permit me to direct a bit that the intention is to tell us, you've said there was a conference in 2016 to discuss about African passport. Now, what must be done in order for us to implement that directives of AU in 2016? Because that will be leading us to actually an action-oriented point on if African passport was discussed in 2016 OAU or AU meeting in Rwanda. Where is it now, and what must be done in order for us to do away with those small countries' passport to acquire continental passport? Can you proceed?
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I actually jumped that. That's exactly the reason why I had to upload it on the comment side so that we read it up. I didn't want to ponder more on it, actually. So I'm sorry I skipped it. And I hope I will have this opportunity to come next time to talk more on that. That's the reason why I said I uploaded it that we should read on it. I didn't want to talk more on it. I just want to talk every other aspect so that we have this longing link that what we are doing here is not a child's play. So that we still have more questions to ask next time. Because in my own side, for instance, we don't use passport in the olden days. There's what we call insignation. Insignation, Igwichi. That is in the biblical aspect, or in the new era, they call it tattoo. Do you understand? During the olden days, we travel from country to country with our tattoo as our passport. The right-hand side tells who your father is or your family is. The one at your left-hand side tells who your maternal home is, where your maternal home is. Then in your front, that's exactly your forechest, shows where your kindred is. Then the same spot behind you shows where your clan is. Then your forehead shows the warrior group where you belong. Do you understand? So we don't actually use passport before now. So when we ponder more on passport, it's as if we are giving more life to it. So I want us to read to that upload I made on the comment section so that we understand actually what we had in mind. That's exactly what we are expected to do henceforth. So at this juncture, I want to plead with us to please give me the time to join the other group, and I will be so happy to be here once more, anytime, any opportunity calls for that. And I promise to present a more favorable and enjoying presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I have found the upload of the guidance of the resolution that was made in 2016 that you shared in the chat in regards, of course, to that one continental passport move. It will be interesting that we look into it, and I request members who were here before to actually download it, and I downloaded it so that we will go through it to see what actually was proposed to be the guideline for actually continental passport, because that is where we need to go. I don't know if there are also been ratifications on having one telephone line system for all Africa, and if that will is there, can they inform us on the open floor section that we'll be going through. I'll request the presenters who have presented before who have not actually put in the chat what must be done, because the intention of this conference is to come out with what must be done. So if you have actually presented before, including the SUP in Mass Party and the CFON on reparations, the information on reparations, can you spare some few minutes to put in the chat what do you think must be done in order for us to attain each and any topic and every topic that has been presented? This will actually then help us to form a concrete solution moving forward and see how we can take our steps moving forward into a concentrated and concerted efforts for action. So thank you very much for that. I will actually go straight to the next speaker. We are almost now around 5 minutes late to our programs, but let me go to the next speaker, who will be Brother Christian Kwame Agoza, who is also the chair of Consciousness Study Class, and his topic will be purely to discuss about the need of us having a continental unity government. It is, of course, one of the silent debates that we are not having. People are still struggling on how to make their individual countries better or their individual nations better. And that's what I said here. Africa was designed to be a country, not a continent. So Brother Kwame will be coming in actually to first introduce himself and tell us what must be done in regards to us attaining one continental government and what does it entail to have one continental government. So Brother Christian Kwame, kindly feel free to come in. Can you look for your microphone? Your microphone is far away. Look for your microphone. Look for your microphone.
Sorry. Yeah, can you hear me now? Is it better?
Clear. Proceed. Yeah, proceed.
Yes. Yeah, I was saying, thank you so much for the job you're doing. I'm going to present, but I would like to present using AI, if that is okay. So I'm going to use an AI to read what I want to share. And Brother Pigeon, confirm it's on the screen. Is that correct? Is it on the screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Text on the screen. Excellent. It's going to read with a Nigerian female voice. Confirm if you can hear it. Was that clear, brother?
Can't hear at all.
The AI is not Nigerian, so we can't hear the
AI. Okay. Right. Okay. Let me try again.
Or when you share, you have to share with the sound.
Yes, I am. Let me try again. Confirm if you can hear the sound. Was that clear?
No sound.
Yes, it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, it's fine. Is it? Is it coming?
It was coming, but at a low sound. So unless you
okay, it's not a problem. I shall read it myself then. One is always trying new technologies. So, so the Consortium Study Group, which has organized this conference, I've got 15 minutes, so I need to time myself. Give me a moment, please. Let me time myself. So thank you very much. Here, hopefully I go. 15 minutes. So, right. So, Africa must unite because of the welfare of the African people that demands it. You see, only a united Africa can guarantee our strategic security, our economic transformation, and our international political presence. So I, Christian Kwame Agbotsa, I'm a conscientist from the nationality of the Eveao, of the new colonial West African territory of Ghana, and I hereby advance the following proposal for the consideration of other nationalities of Africa without fear of favor. So I propose a constitutional conference. So Brother Pigeon, you are asking what we should put in the chat, what it is we want done. This is what I am proposing we should do. That we should propose a constitutional conference as soon as possible. And the purpose of that conference should be to resolve to form a United Nations of Africa, which is a single African state. I propose a new national Black empire that shall be forever and ever, living in peace and harmony, alongside all other nations in the new global community of law and order. A new world order, not a United States of Africa, rather the United Nations of Africa. For us, everything must be about repairing Africa, every part of Africa, requiring repairing ourselves through re-education, reconstruction, restoration, decolonization, justice, re-equalization, revival, reinvention, re-establishment of African images as beautiful and courageous, reimagination of a new world in which liberated Africa lives in unity and redevelops itself in perpetuity. In this regard, we know that different instruments will be directed at our unification project, including surveillance, infiltration, drugs, clinical interventions, military, economic, biological, geological, and chemical means, and all other forms of terrorism, all of which the global African army, which we are ready for. Before we even start, we know that we are already assured of victory. How do we know? From dialectics. From dialectics, we know because there are forces. These are forces, and there are forces.
We cannot see your screen. Are you able to scroll your text on the screen?
I am indeed. But if you can hear my
Speak up a bit, please.
sorry,
You can scroll so that we see what you are speaking, or you can just speak so that we don't see what you are.
I am in this scrolling down. Confirm if you can see it. I am in this scrolling down. Just give me a moment, please. Let me make it also bigger, if that helps. Yeah, I've made it bigger as well, and I'm scrolling down as I go.
There's nothing on our side, but proceed.
Okay, let me just check that. Let me stop and share again. I'm resharing the screen. Hopefully that should be okay.
Brother Kwame, can you raise your voice a bit, please?
I can indeed.
Thank you.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, proceed.
Okay. So, as I was saying, different instruments will be directed at our unification project, and I've named them. There are very many. Nkrumah calls them the instruments of new colonialism in his book, New Colonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. Now, before we even, as I said, before we even start, we are short of victory because dialectics tells us that these are forces and they are forces who will fight us in perpetuity. Even after we are united, they will still fight us. So the fighting should not be new to us. From the beginning, science tells us that violence is the order of the universe. That's what science tells us. That's what the Big Bang was about. It's about violence. No doubt they said that men were prepared to kill one another to please some higher authority, which rejoiced at life sacrifices, whether they were animals or humans, as in Cain and Abel or the Roman murder of Jesus Christ. Since then, it has been a case of war and violence among the human family, which continued until Westphalia, according to the Oxford bibliographies. It was a treaty. This treaty, we are told, brought peace and the birth of the United Provinces of the Netherlands, what you call the Dutch Republic, the Dutch state, which we are told is the first nation in the modern sense, according to Professor Wang Gangwu. But when William the Conqueror landed to subjugate the Anglo-Saxons in 1066 in England, ancient Ghana, the first Sudanese state to emerge, was at the peak of its power. Looking back, we can see that ancient Ghana, with an army of at least 200,000 soldiers and a monarchical personal force of 5,000 soldiers, failed to use its wealth to organize for the continental unity of the African continent and the institution of a continental government, a project that modern Ghana under Osagyefo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's leadership, would later attempt to unsuccessfully correct because of internal African enemies. Anyway, after the Peace of Westphalia in 1648, 511 years after Mansa Musa squandered Africa's wealth on useless projects rather than the unification of Africa from North to South Africa, other territories in Europe wanted to become nations in the modern sense. And yet Mansa Musa did nothing about it with all his wealth. The colonization and colonialization of Africa soon followed. African elites willingly decided to be oblivious or were willingly ignorant of this development for the importance of the unification project. Through the global maritime project led by the Dutch and later other European nation states, Africa came to be illegitimately colonized and divided among the emerging European powers in Berlin, typically Britain and France, represented two contrasting types of the modern state. One was based on royalty and the other on the people. So we had a royalist nation and a republican nation, both contesting illegitimately for global supremacy. Austria, Hungary, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Britain, Italy, the Netherlands, Portugal, Russia, Spain, Sweden, Norway, which was unified in 1814 to 1905, Turkey, and the United States of Africa were the countries that gathered at that illegitimate 1884 Berlin Conference to do what? To divide Africa without her consent. We know today that neither Muslims, represented by Turkey, nor Christians, represented by the United States of America, so-called royalists, represented by Germany at the time, and Republicans, France, spoke up for the illegitimacy, the illegality, and the illegitimacy of that gathering's illegitimate intent. Only Russia, till today, is a true friend of Africa's liberty, as the Padmore Nkrumah debates demonstrate. China was itself later colonized, but was not present at that conference. Today, Africa counts Russia and China as the most honest friends of African liberation, unification, and development. The Africa that Berlin in 1884 illegitimately usurped was an Africa of chiefs and kingdoms, like China before Chiang Kai-shek or Japan before the Meiji Restoration. It was not an Africa in the modern sense. Kings and chiefs like His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie held political power. These holders of political power, like the Otumfuo, the Asantehene of Asanteman of Ghana, or the Kabaka of Buganda in Uganda, or the Oba of Benin, or King Logenbula of Matabeleland, were those who were dispossessed by Berlin Africa, and to whose royal descendants political power was never returned after independence, or who were killed before or after the post-independence movement of Africa. After sub-Saharan African independence began with Ghana in 1957, the divided territories of Africa, which we call Berlin Africa, became post-colonial nations in the modern sense, but lacked true national sovereignty because the former imperialist powers sought to continue to dominate the African states' national affairs through a new breed of national politicians described as neo-colonialists. These many hold office but do not exercise sovereign power, but become stooges in the hands of former imperialists, as Japan had sought to impose on China before the destruction of the Japanese national empire by the USA. We know that USA is itself a migrant nation built on the genocide of indigenous Africans and indigenous Americans and the enslavement of Africans from the African continent. No colonies today include African politicians. I would say that the United States of America has proven itself the real enemy of African independence, unification, and development, as it led the illegitimate overthrow of the government of Ghana in 1966. The evolution of the current African Union has emanated from the Organization of African Unity, which was a collection of Berlin African states after the success of the decolonization movement that Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah led, assisted later by George Padmore, with a history that goes back to the Pan-African Conference of 1901 in the United States of America, and even further to Haiti. The current African Union is thus a union of sovereign African states, but it still needs to represent what Africans everywhere want in their homeland, the African homeland of the African habitat. The African Union does not express the will of the African people who own Africa together. It does not represent the sovereign will of the African owners of Africa. Many nationalities make up Africa. The word nationality itself having the same meaning as used by our brother Jack Alechu Oita in his book, Taking Back Ownership of Africa. The African Union today cannot express what the Union of Africa should look like in terms of national law. United Nation of Africa, of Africa's nationalities, the diverse nations of Africa better represent our aspirations. What is needed is a one single African nation, such as Marcus Garvey dreamt of when he talked about one God, one aim, one destiny. Thus, we need one African nation made up of the nations of Africa, wherever they can be found on the planet Earth or elsewhere. African nations can be found on the continent of Africa and elsewhere, North and South America, Asia, Australia, Australasia, and Europe. We need one nation which all and only Black people are one. Such a single nation of African nations is a project before us. There shall be a united nation with a united party to which all belong. It is a paramount task before us. Elections shall take place at the single level of the nationalities through direct democracy, where the nation shall elect their representatives. All officials shall be appointed based on a clear scientific criteria from these representatives, both competitively and in a meritocratic way. There shall be no special privileges based on family, religion, origin, or place of birth, among others. All women and men should be equal. It must result from the resolutions of the African nations on the continent and worldwide to become part of this new single African nation. Today, the United Nations of China is a testament that this is possible. The numerous nations of Africa are today made of the nations of people like myself from the Biao, the Luo, the Gandangme, the Akans, the Agumbas, Habesham, Amhara, Chiwa, Fulani, Hausa, Hutu, Tutsi, Igbo, Kanuri, Congo, Luba, Magrebis, Mongo, Nilotis, Oromo, Shona, Somali, Yoruba, Zulu, among others. These are the nationalities. In their own sovereign right, these African nations have been compressed and suppressed into an underbelly in Africa. In previous times, against their will, Berlin itself being an imposition by external forces. The territorial integrity for all these African nations has been compressed within the territorial integrity of post-independent states of Berlin, Africa. These African nations, including the African diaspora, such as the CARICOM nations of Haiti, Barbados, and others, must all come together to form a single African nation. The new Africa will be a new nation under international law. Such a global African Congress of African nations should periodically hold their own Congress of all African nations. Each nation, whatever its size, should have one vote, hence United Africa. The political headquarters of the new African nation, I suggest, should be in Ethiopia. The economic headquarters of the new African nation, I suggest, should be in Nigeria, which should also house the new African Reparations Bank. The philosophical and ideological headquarters of the new African nation should be in Ghana. Its new Mecca shall be the mausoleum of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the William Du Bois Center, and the George Padmore Library. The Holocaust Center of the new African nation should be in Rwanda to remind us that never should that happen again. The new compelling United Nations of the world order, of the new world order, should be in Nigeria, and to which institution Africa should admit the rest of all the nationalities of the world, such as Russia, UK, China, USA, and France on equal terms, thus abolishing the current undemocratic United Nations and its undemocratic Security Council. Brother, my 15 minutes is up. I'm happy to continue and finish if you would like me to.
Kelly, in the next 3 to 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I'm almost now finished. Yes, there should be one passport for all Africans and dual citizenship passports for all Africans like myself in the diaspora. There should be one African High Command under the civilian control of the United Nations of Africa, with its own independent United African Army, United African Air Force, and United African Navy. The purpose of the African High Command, in which all African youth must serve as a matter of patriotic duty, shall be to defend the territorial integrity of all of Africa, hence the total liberation of Africa at all times and the maintenance of the United Nations of Africa forever and ever, world without end. All current Berlin African sovereign states in the African Union shall become provinces in the new United African Nation. We shall have provincial regions, district, areas, and units. A province shall be composed of different nationalities who shall all have political representation within the provincial government of the nationalities and the new African Continental Government. The size of the various territories of the provinces shall be based on geographical and mathematical calculations. There shall be one continental African government based in the province of Ethiopia as I propose. And the ceremonial head of the African nation should be drawn from the royal houses of the African nations, who should hold the position in rotational symmetry. No appointed or elected president should ever again be a head of state in the new world order. A head of state, whether male or female, should be an unelected member of the nationalities of Africa. The head of state can be a Kabaka, a Zulu, a king, an Asantehene, or an Oba, or whatever in rotation. The nations, provinces, regions, districts, and areas should have their presidents, but they should not be the heads of state. Both males and females should occupy each position. Whereas both male and female shall hold every position, only a woman, we think, should hold certain designated cultural and spiritual positions to be confirmed. We propose that there should be no more political parties in Africa. All political parties should be abolished. No multi-party democracy based on the Western liberal democratic system, through which special interests dominate the state, like the United States of America, or special families dominate the state, like the United Kingdom, either directly or indirectly. All interests should be under the direct democratic control of the nationalities that I have mentioned. And all families and nationalities are equal and sovereign, while expressing their sovereignty in the single United Nation of the African state under international law. The standard of life of all the members of the different nationalities shall remain sacred. There shall be minimum standards of life that all should enjoy. A rapid Africa plan should be implemented to ensure a united Africa is developed. The welfare of Africans shall henceforth be the supreme law. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. That was actually spirited. Yet, if this was to be presented in AU conference, they can all walk out. Never ready to attend another AU conference. Thank you very much, Brother Kwame, for this, and I'll allow members to ask you questions when you reach at the actually question section. So that's very important, as you said, that we are here not actually to complain much of what should be done, but rather to understand and agree on what must be done. So after this, we will be moving to an extent of now consolidating our efforts to do that which is supposed to be done. And this is why we had this conference, to come up with the resolutions of what must be done and bring together all the concepts possible so that we can start now organizing a team or teams of people who are working on the same ideas, coming together to start working that journey of producing actually what must be done, so that if it is a matter of rectification, let it be ratified. If it's a matter of adoption, let it be adopted. But this is the next phase after this conversation. So thank you very much, Brother Kwame, for putting forth what must be done in order for Africa to achieve a continental unity government and what you envision that unity government must look like. So we are actually going to our last phase in the next few minutes. I'll only be talking briefly in around 10 minutes in regards to the topic Pan-African Solidarity Fund. Then Brother Coco will be coming in to chair the open open floor session, which will be question and answer, cross question and answer, and sharing more thinking in the last hour of our conversation. We are having a 3-hour conversation. We are almost meeting the second hour, so we'll be going to the third hour, which will be an open conversation where we draw actually to the thinking of each and every person, ask question and answer, and come up at actually a resolution of this 2-day conference. Then from there, we will now move to organize all Pan-Africans who are doing the same thing into actually working in coordinated committees, so that in 1 year time, we are looking forward to us agreeing on manual or documents or actually directions or constitutions, as Brother Kwame is saying, that should be moved around the Africa for adoption. So in regards to Pan-African Solidarity Fund, my thinking is that of course, will be presenting this. I'm coming from Kenya. My thinking is that all these efforts need resources. All the efforts for one passport, one continental government, one mass party, and all other efforts we've discussed today need resources. Now, to the words of course, it's probably Sankara who said, "Who feeds you control you." Who will actually fund the initiatives, or where will we get the support or the resources to implement the initiatives we want as a people in order to attain a liberated continent, a united continent, and actually a developed continent? And that's where the failures come. If we don't fund our initiatives, if we don't put resources to our own projects for our own unification, nothing will come out. If you check how the West are organized, they have put up their funding system in the name of IMF, World Bank, to continue controlling Africa, and in the pretense that they are loaning us for development, when it is not loaning us for development, is to control and enslave us more and more. In fact, as it was said, the debt they're giving us is a trap to recolonize us. So where is the way forward for Africans to mobilize resources that can aid towards the liberation of Africa, development of Africa, and unification of Africa? Where are our many Pan-African organizations that are doing positive actions on the ground of Africa? Will get resources and support to do this. Majority of our Pan-Africans still believe that Africa will actually attain whatever we are struggling with by a lip talk or a lip service. I know and appreciate that majority of us here who are pushing various Pan-African movements have not only been speaking, but have gone in their pocket to facilitate and fund the ideas that they think is necessary. This is done at an individual capacity, as many other individuals are trying to pool their resources and the little resources they have in order to actually fund and facilitate this revolution. The revolution must be funded. The revolution must be resourced. In terms of even reaching out to the people, as HCP is trying to do the math thing, in terms of even mobilizing and bringing together technical support team that has to sit and do everything else. You see, even Zoom accounts like what you're using, sometimes you need resources and others need resources. And this must actually now come from the Africans. Now, how do we concert that effort to ensure that we have a fund that is actually bring together Africans who put their resources together to ensure that those resources are directed towards the actions and activities that are leading to the liberation, unification, and development of Africa. And this is where the idea of a Pan-African Solidarity Fund is coming in. We know very well in context that even African Development Fund is not funded by Africa. African Development Fund is funded almost 40% by the West. We know that even African governments that are running today are still being funded by the West, either through the laws they say. But we, the Africans, are giving our resources. We are putting our taxes to these governments, but still this cannot come out. Is it time that we must also come out, put our resources, as we put our taxes, to a treaty that can actually ensure that we Africans support the liberation, the unification, and the development struggles that many of Pan-Africans are doing? This is the concept of Pan-African Solidarity Fund. We need an independent solidarity fund that is supported by Africans, controlled by us, and for our own clear missions, which is unification, as I'm saying, liberation, and development. In the early days, there was African Liberation Support Committee that actually was organized to help support Ethiopia fight the battle against the invasion of the Italians and the rest. And even people came out from all the ways from Caribbean to come and stand in solidarity and fight with Ethiopians. Today, this solidarity is somehow missing. And this is why it is actually important that we must bring up the solidarity in action. We must think for action. We cannot just continue speaking, but it's a time that we must put our resources to facilitate our activity. And this is the concept of Pan-African Solidarity Fund. So I am appealing and presenting this, that we must now think along that line. Is it time that if we are actually going to carry out independent activities and continue to facilitate these independent activities that are moving across by the progressive Pan-African, that we need to tap our resources, put our resources together, both expertise, technical resources, financial resources, our time, our volunteering, even personalities to come out and support the move in Africa. We must come back to those who are out of Africa to join the process within the continent to help physically, financially, spiritually, and all means possible so that we can actually push forward this journey. It is time for that. And it's a time that we must think along that line. Because without resources and our resources, we might find it very hard to move forward. So let's think along that line. It's an idea that we must actually see how we can actualize it. It must be an independent idea that we must actualize. And today, see, for example, the West has put resources, created academy and leadership schools where they put their resources to train our young people in the leadership. Where are we putting our resources? For example, I know SUP is running Free-Minded Academy. Where do we put our resources to support Free-Minded Academy to teach Africans? Consciousness is running a philosophical and ideological class. Where do we put our resources to support consciousness to deliver the philosophy and ideology for the people? Where do we actually put our resources? If you check the West, they are funding and facilitating their so-called churches to actually expand their missions. They build churches, they build missionary schools, they build missionary hospitals, they build whatever. Where are the Pan-Africans starting to put their resources to build Pan-African hospital, Pan-African schools, Pan-African roads, Pan-African banks, Pan-African everything? There's nothing like that, but they're succeeding. And that's why we go through the missionary schools. They ensure that before you graduate, you are a missionary, before you become an African. So we need to have resources. We need to pull together to ensure that we put our resources together to facilitate our things and to start moving in the directions. If they have a Pan-African missionary school, if they have a missionary school, we'll have a Pan-African school. If they have a missionary hospital, we'll have a Pan-African hospital. That will ensure that the medicines used there are our herbal and traditional medicine, not the Pfizer's and the Bill Gates or whatever medicine. These all need resources. We need resources to ensure that we start training, building our next generation of leaders. We need resources to ensure that we start funding our governments and know that our governments are funded by them. We need resources to push the agenda for reparation, restitution, development, and everything else that pertains to Africa. If we don't think along that line, we will be slaves to those who are actually owing us or owning us. And that's how today they can tame our presidents, they can take our boss as they are threatening, they can take our land in the name of their loans, and they're repaying their loans. And that's why today our presidents will go in their forums, in their assemblies, look for money, beg for money, and come back and drop the money. Then they put us as collaterals. So we Africans are collateral for them again to own us. And that's why they can invade our land, do everything they want, because they know we depend on them. Our population is enough. We are over 1.4 billion. Even if you were to put let me say $1, 1 shilling per day, or even per month, we would have actually collected about $1.4 billion in a month or in a year. $1.4 billion even in a year is enough for us to start building a dam in Congo. $1.4 billion is even enough for us to start building an academy in whatever country it is. $1.5 million is enough for us to start training our people. It's a matter of us thinking in that direction. Because if we don't think in that direction, they are always thinking on how to continue enforcing us, how to continue controlling us, and how to continue enslaving us through their so-called funds, donations, and loans that they give to us. That is my appeal, and that's my thinking, and my call to action that what must be done, we must set up a Pan-African Solidarity Fund, or even an Pan-African Solidarity Bank, whatever you want to call it, but it must be a Pan-African Solidarity Center where we must pull our resources together to start being independent. Thank you very much. I'll have to stop there. My 10 minutes is over, and I request Brother Coco to come in and moderate and take us to the next session of questions and answers. And I appreciate all of you who have been contributing. And then I request that let's put into our chats whatever you feel must be done so that we can cover this in our chats after the conversation. Brother Coco, kindly come in.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you for an impassioned plea to everyone to come together. Let's put our hands in our pockets, not on our mouths. So put our hands, I mean, the money where the mouth is to move this forward. I think I've seen something from Brother Sipiwe saying, if we had started a long time ago, it would have been a matter of how we implement this, not a matter of when or why. We are way past that now. So it's a matter of moving in the right direction. Today's speakers, they were really, really good speakers today, and all important messages, of course. And I'm thinking Kwame Nkrumah will be smiling wherever he is because of how he's seeing the African children mobilizing, coming together to do this. And I'm humbled to be part of this because I can feel the spirit. I can feel the winds of change. I can feel the awakening happening in Africa. It's a very opportune moment now, which we should seize with both hands. Otherwise, we will regret. But the most important thing is, are we really free now? Are we free to do all of these decisions? But I think the ACUP is already some steps far ahead in terms of trying to claw back some of that agency, which we need to move forward. So at this moment, I would like to give some of the members who have been here, have been following, but have not had the chance to raise their comments or ask questions that they have. My brother, Karanja, I'll start with you. I know there are some comments you have put in the chat, and you talked about a lot of things. In fact, you believe that we are still in under colonialism right now. So we are on the 4th stage of colonialism, as according to Machiavelli, the prince. Instead of what Kwame Nkrumah said about new colonialism, where we are. So do you want to come and say how you see things moving on at the moment?
Sure. I wasn't expecting that. But yes, I don't refer to us as being in neo-colonialism because we haven't yet come out of colonialism. So, and I often talk about the 4 stages of colonialism as described in The Prince by Machiavelli, which is the first stage is you come in with your armies and your administrators. The second phase is you create an elite class and you teach them your language, you teach them how to behave like you, to be brutal like you against their own people, and promise them privileges and adjacency to the privilege. The third stage is where we were in the 1950s and 1960s, where we were so quote unquote so-called given freedom, which of course we know was a poisoned chalice. It was not freedom because the 4th stage is the economic subjugation, economic exploitation, where they reap the seeds of their that they sowed of colonialism. So we are in the fourth stage of colonialism. And so what we have to do is fight to get out of colonialism. And colonialism is, I concur completely with the gentleman earlier who said that colonialism was a war. It was not just one thing. It was not just slavery. It was not just colonialism. It was a whole entire war, a system of warfare, mental, economic, physical, on African people globally. And so we are still we are still experiencing the impact of that very visibly and very brutally and aggressively in terms of the continued stealing of our property, our land, our labor. You know, slavery never ended. It's simply been outsourced to Africa and the Caribbean and other places where African people are. But further, they continue that system of warfare on our minds, on our freedom, on our psyche. They continue to tell us that we are no good. They continue to use language and terminology that is, you know, packed full of psychology and social psychology. You know, when they tell us that our leaders are no good, and we repeat that over and over again, to the point that we don't recognize that when we claim that our leaders are all corrupt and they're thieves and they're no good, what we're really saying is we are thieves and we are no good and we are corrupt, because our leaders are us. They're not Martian, they're not from Venus, they're not from outer space, they are us. They're a reflection of us. And so we repeat that over and over again to the point that you now start hearing people actually repeat that about themselves. I never thought that I would hear in a Pan-African conference about Europeans discovering Africa and the revision of history where Mansa Musa squandered our wealth. And so we have learned so much to hate ourselves and to hate everything African that it becomes more natural to repeat negative tropes about ourselves than to actually challenge colonialism and imperialism. It's more natural. I stand out when I'm challenging these negative narratives. I stand out because it disturbs, unfortunately, the African psyche when you're not repeating the negative tropes. And so we have a big, massive job to do. It does start with fighting the economic colonialism, such as has been done by the brave leaders, by the brave people, not just the leaders, the brave people of Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, and the other brave Africans, particularly in West Africa, in the French-speaking countries that have been terrorized by France, because the people in these countries are very much awake to the impact of continued colonialism, whereas we in the English-speaking parts, those of us who've been terrorized by the US and the United Kingdom, continue to be a slumber. We continue to want to be adjacent to the colonizer. We continue to think of ourselves as somehow not colonized. And it's a dangerous thing when you do not even know that you're enslaved. Harriet Tubman said that she could have saved so many more if only they knew they were enslaved. We are cheering on the French speakers, and we are very happy that they are freeing themselves. And we are sitting pretty as if we believe that we are not subjugated. We are busy construing fights against other people that look like us instead of uniting to fight the colonizer. Those of us who live in the English-speaking world, save for Zimbabwe, seem to be far more bitter and angry at our leaders than we are at the colonizer. Our leaders are just victims of colonialism, and I don't know I really don't understand what the definition of neo-colonialists are when I hear that African leaders are neo-colonizers. I mean, they're African, they're colonized just like us. So it's very confusing, but it is part of the colonial, the total absolute colonial subjugation, mental, physical, economic, psychological, and otherwise. Thank you. I'm going to yield there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've raised some points, some questions. Before I come to my brother who has his hand up, Brother Kwame, do you want to come in and talk a bit about neo-colonialism? Oh, we have just lost Brother Kwame. I think he's experiencing some technical problems. Brother Siani?
Thank you, Comrade Koko. I think I want to emphasize on the fact that the war that was engaged against Africans was not just to, you know, it has driven into the fabrics and has changed the mentality of most Africans towards achieving the colonial objective, which was to divide and to conquer us. And we start this ideological thinking that, of course, we learn from each other. The colonialists succeeded to divide the various into the tribes, divided us right from the root of the various tribes, the various class structures, using different educational systems and political structures. So for us to eradicate these, we must also recognize the fact that the neo-colonialists, which we are talking about, are those of us who have maintained the same system of oppression that have not changed a bit in developing the mental capabilities of Africans since the flag independence of Africa. For over 60 years that Africans have been flag independent, have obtained flag independence, the African people have not been able to move an inch towards supporting each other in terms of being self-sustainable, being able to feed themselves, accommodate themselves, and finding solutions to their own problems. I think it is time that we must change that narrative. And we know what to do. I think this conference has really laid that platform and the foundation for us to start building. And I want to commend Comrade Kwame for that proposal, that constitutional proposal, which I think is also a way for us to start thinking of coming together to endorse it or to add value to it and make it workable document. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you.
Go
ahead.
I am back. So yeah, I'm happy to. I was happy. Sorry, I had to also change my internet connection because somehow I get interrupted by forces that I think are done a close eye on me myself. Okay. But anyway, putting that aside, I wanted to ask Brother Karaja whether or not he can share his link where Machiavelli says the 4 stages of imperialism, colonialism. I would like him to share the link to the page, the work of Machiavelli, and the pages in which Machiavelli himself has actually stated that those are the 4 stages. So I'll really be pleased Brother Karanja can share that with us in the chat, that if he's able to. If he's not able to share it right now, I'll be pleased if he can share it with Brother Pigeon later, so that Brother Pigeon can share it with us. Because it will be, I think, for ideologically and philosophically, to be to our advantage, I think, if we get to know where in Machiavelli's work he himself has said those things. That's the first thing. The other thing also is that Brother Karanja seems to be saying that whenever, as an African, I am aware of my own shortcomings and I say so, then somehow it is wrong. So if I say that Mansa Musa squandered our resources, which he did, because this man went on some mission, took our gold outside the continent, what did Mansa Musa do with all that gold? If you look in some African history books, you will be told that Mansa Musa was one of the richest men on this planet. What did he do with all that wealth? The children of Africa today, there are children of Africa today who are not in school, right? Can we imagine how much, what African gold can do for us? I mean, as we are here. So if I am conscious of my my own shortcomings as an African, it doesn't mean that it is wrong, or that I should not acknowledge it, or that I stop there. Philosophical conscientism always starts with a problem. If you want to solve a problem, you must start with a correct analysis of the problem. And sometimes you have to be truthful to yourself. So that is my second point. The other thing also is that I hear what Brother Karanja is saying, that he has his own, he has his, if you like, methodology on how he sees colonialism. That's fine. That's fine. But he must also recognize that we in the Consensus Study Group do not use his model. The model that we use is a Kwame Nkrumah model. And the Kwame Nkrumah model, of course, I accept that there can be competing models. That is fine. That is fine. But he must not expect us, or all of us, to use the model that he's using. And as I said, the model that we are using is a model that was subject to Kwame Nkrumah, who led the decolonization of Africa, starting from Ghana in 1957. Yeah? And enabled and helped other African countries to be free from 1957, and by 1960, most African countries were free. There are one or two that are still not free, but but South Africa was free in 1994. And I remember Winnie Mandela saying that if Kwame Nkrumah was here, you should go and tell Kwame Nkrumah that the last African country was free indeed. So it is Kwame Nkrumah who has given us a framework that we use. And under Kwame Nkrumah's model, we are not under colonialism, I'm afraid, Brother Karanja. We are not under colonialism in the sense in which colonialism was understood by our intellectuals. Okay? That kind of colonialism does not exist today. So we are not under colonialism. We are under what Nkrumah called neo-colonialism. And yes, Brother Karanja, yes, it is true that the political leadership of Africa today, yeah, the political conservatives who want the wealth of Africa only for themselves and their families, the political liberals who want Africa's wealth only for their own minority, either it's the political party or the nationality they belong to, or the party they belong to, or the area they come from. Yeah, these are real, and these are part of the neo-colonial machinery on the continent. So of course, they are part of the neo-colonial machinery. Okay, so when we say that the political leaders of Africa today are neo-colonialists in that sense, you should understand. We are talking to the facts on the ground. If you look at Africa today, the entire continent, yeah, there is no African leader that is leading the decolonization of Africa, for if you like, the neo-colonization of Africa. Okay, the last one that tried it was killed. Yeah, in North Africa, he was killed. As we speak, yeah, the Malians and the Burkinabes and the Chadians and so on, they have done something, but as far as we know, they haven't called for a united Africa. As far as we know, I'm not aware. Maybe you are aware. As far as we know, they have not called for a continental government. What they have called for, as far as I can see, is a regional. They are calling for a regional government of the Sahel regions. That is not what we want. What we want, that which will guarantee our strategic security as Africans, is a continental government, and that is what we want. So I am afraid that, to summarize, we don't accept your model of colonialism, I'm afraid. We don't accept it, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, my brother. I'm going to take where you and Brother Karanja have common grounds, because you do have common grounds somewhere. You are both saying the African resources are being taken and being used to develop other countries and other continents. You are agreeing on that, regardless of which stage it is, whether it's colonialism or neo-colonialism, but African resources are being used elsewhere. And that is a problem which we need to address. The other thing which you both agree on is that colonialism has left a legacy, and that legacy is a miseducation of the African. And that has led to the leadership that we have today, the leadership we are thrust with today, which we have to deal with. But that leadership is coming from within ourselves. And to address that, we need to re-educate ourselves. I think Brother Sipiwe had talked about ideology. And I think my brother Mfanelo Ndlovu is still there with the ACUP ideology. I would like the two of you to come on board and discuss what you see as the ideology which we need to embrace as Africans to free ourselves. Brother Sipiwe or Mfanelo?
Yes, I'm here, King. Did we just the moderator?
So we have a problem. We know we have a problem. And I think you guys have already taken some steps to develop the ACUP ideology. But what is needed is a pan-African ideology, which needs to be adopted Africa-wide. I know Brother Kwame said the Sahelian governments, they are coming together right now, forming something, but they're at least doing something, which is, we cannot be said for all the other African countries. And I know again why they are isolating themselves is because they found opposition from the other countries. So I want us to talk about what ideology can we talk about that can free ourselves from the conundrum we are in.
Okay. All right. I can just, I'll be glad to contribute. I think first thing first, I saw some question as well on the chat regarding what is the difference with ACUP from the current political organizations. And I also had another suggestion saying maybe we do away with the political parties, get rid of the political parties and restore the various tribes and, leaders. I heard that. And then There was another question about, okay, who is in charge of ACUP in South Africa? You know, so I would like to respond on the game plan, but also perhaps put priority. There's two ways. You know, here's my suggestion. You know, the king there talked to us about we need capital for the revolution, solidarity fund. So I wanna present to all of us here that Africa today, this very day as we speak on this conference, we've got all the resources we need. We've got all the brains we need. We've got all the capital we need. The question is, the people and the decision makers of that capital, the resources, right now sits in the current heads of states. Right now. So my president here, Cyril, has an influence in our national treasury today, right now. So same is the Ghanaian head of state there, same as the president ZANU-PF there in Zimbabwe. So Africa does not lack money, does not lack capital. We've got everything we need today. And here is the game changer. Right now, we are running on a democratic dispensation. So the only way you win in a democratic dispensation is majority. Majority rules. So how do we take advantage of influencing? I'm not talking in 10 years' time. I'm talking 2024. Everybody's going on election 2024 in many nations in Africa. So what are the principles of democracy? So I'm giving you an example based on South African context. We've recently done a stats. We are 62 million in South Africa. You know, a study just recently done. 81% of that is the natives. 7% of that is Europeans. And guess what? South African economy today, the banks, you heard the recent scandals. All the banks in South Africa stole, you know, they manipulated the rand and stole the money from South Africa, all of them. Now, who controls this capital? It's the minority, the 7%. So the problem we have is that we've allowed our vast resources to be controlled by the minorities. So how do we correct that? We use the majority. So the only thing we need to be doing, all of us sitting here, everybody must be mobilizing on the ground on their nations. And right now, democracy allows you to actively put pressure on your current heads of state. Right now, before we do any Congress, before we change any government, right now, we can actually hold both the political heads accountable and heads of corporates. It doesn't matter what corporate it is, even if it's ESCOM, even if it's SAA, even if it's the banks, they can be called to account because majority rules. How does majority rule? You have power. For instance, I've just said in South Africa, 81% are the natives. So if all the natives, 81% of them, just one day say, you know what, everybody do not go to work, the entire economy of South Africa will stand still. If the same 81% of the natives say, I am not buying this brand, I'm not banking in this bank and this bank and this bank because until they account, the entire economy will collapse because it's our buying power, it's our expertise working and keep these engines going. So democracy requires mobilizations of the masses. So the priority number one is that each one of us, before we go on a conference, because you can go to the conference, Marcus Garvey was in the conference, had 15 million people there. What happened now? More than 100 years later. So, you know, when you are alone, you don't have the majority backing you. You know, you are alone. Nobody is organizing to stand with you. For instance, this is the thing that affected Gaddafi and took out Kwame Nkrumah, is the fact that the continent did not stand together. So here is what the ACUP is saying today, is saying, across 54 nations and across all diaspora bases right now, 2024, everybody mobilize and unite in those territories. And we coordinate a massive, I mean, in April, we are planning a march for single currency. So in South Africa, we don't want the fact that South African Reserve Bank and American Federal Reserve Bank are in private equity. They are owned by the banks. They are owned by the few elite. And this is what, if there's any
Are we losing you, brother? Oh. We lost our brother mid-flow there, but hopefully he will come back. And oh, continue. Looks like you're back.
Sorry, am I back?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Yeah, the owners of the technology and IP don't like us to talk about them. So
Good.
we are the majority. We are the ones who make those bank works. We are the ones who give Cyril and appoint Cyril as our president, head of state, give a mandate what we want. So here's what we haven't done as Africa. I mean, 3 decades of Cyril's power, so many years of Ghanaian power. What we haven't done, the masses have not mobilized and flexed their muscle. If we all coordinate this movement across 54 nations, across diaspora bases, and talk to our brothers everywhere in the Caribbean and tell them in April, we are having a march, everybody tools down. We want single currency and sovereignty of each state. Each state must trade and be allowed to have its own reserve bank and have its own currency, and nobody must dictate. We want that sovereignty. You know, we cut this global monopolist capital. I tell you, the day we do that, we have a solution of what we want. The next March, we tell the heads of state, we go and vote right now, call an emergency, sitting in the African Union. You are changing policy about one state Africa. Today, we put the same pressure. We are not going to work until that is done. So we don't even have to do nothing. There is an infrastructure right now for governments to come and sit there and deliberate on conferences. They pay a lot of money. They have a lot of budget. So we don't even need the money to, once you take that power, the state will fund this conference and this. So you don't have to be having a solidarity fund. It's already here. So all we need to do, each nation must put pressure. So let's do mobilization. Let's get on the ground. Let's unite. Get that 81% natives in all of these continents to agree that on April this 2024, we are doing a demonstration. We're going to march to our parliaments, to our heads of states, everywhere, same time. Even in America, they will march to the US head of state. Even in China, they will march to. If we do that, the whole world will stand and listen because we have the power. Because right now, United Nations tells us that more than 50% of global workforce comes from Africa. 1 in 4 of the current 8 billion is from Africa. Imagine the buying power. Imagine the labor, the intellectual property from all of that. We are the ones making the world. If Africans, the 2 billion, decides to not go to work now, the entire globe economy will collapse. So the power we have is in us getting the message across the 2 billion of our sons and daughters sitting all over the world to actually come together April and make a stand. So if we organize such things, then we know we have a backing and we have the masses. If we do, we will then push our heads of states to give us the budget to have a proper planning conference. They will finance it in the African Union head office buildings in Ethiopia. We will have the Congress. We will make the new constitutions because we have the power. We have the people. It's democracy, so we can use that. Otherwise, we have to use the coup. Military power, which we don't control.
So the question I have is, we are assuming that all the masses we have across the planet understand or speak the same language as we do. And I think it's going back to that question where I said, how do we sell that to them? How do we sell ourselves to them to say, this is for your own good?
Okay, so in ACUP, we
May I
realize
jump? May I
you
jump
have
in
to
here,
have three
please?
Give him a
Okay,
second.
okay.
Just a second. Continue. Continue.
Okay,
brother.
so there are three solutions on the plate. There is a social solution, there is an economic solution, there is a political solution. Those have to be in parallel. They have to be running together. So what is it happening on the ground on the social solution? We're mobilizing the youth. When I spoke earlier, I did mention that the median age of our population is 19 years and younger. So what is it that we should be doing? We should be training. That's why we have a free-minded academy. And that's why we're collaborating with many stakeholders that are doing training on the ground. Since 2020, we've already trained, certified, qualification, more than 800 young people. And we've engaged about 3,000 on social platforms. And we've been on Eswatini TV, we've been on SABC chat rooms, we've been on some Pan-African daily TV. The message, we have to keep preaching it to the youth and mobilizing youth. All of us here can mobilize youth, thanks to social media and social platforms. So all of us should be engaging in that. So it just starts there. We have to train the youth social program. Two, when we train these youth, what is it that we're training them for? We are saying to them, listen, gone are the days where you want to queue and look for jobs. We need you now to be producers, not consumers. We need you to give us brands, service, product that we can put in the market. We will give you the capital. We will give you the global expertise. We will create the market for you. So all we need you to do is take your talent, produce whatever you come with, whether it's arts, whether it's farming, whether it's food, it doesn't matter. Just put it on the plate. We will finance it. We will give you the buying power and the market, and we'll assemble the global expertise. Diaspora is here. We've got professors, doctors, engineers. So that is the game plan.
Thank you. Brother Sipiwe, you wanted to come in.
Yes, give thanks. I want to thank all the speakers for their contribution and address some of the points that were directly made. And I want to emphasize I can speak directly to this because on the one hand, working with Ambassador Erikana Chihombo, for those of you that don't know, she was the woman who was summarily dismissed as the AU representative to the United States for her outspoken, fiery speech against colonialism, neo-colonialism, and particularly the French. She told me that her 3 years within the AU was like going to a graduate program in power at the highest state level, and she graduated with honors. And as a result of that, she got clarity on what needed to be done. And some of the heads of state advised her
We have lost our brother again. Well, he will come back. But while we are waiting for him to come back, any further comments on what Brother Mfanelo proposed?
Yes, I do. If that's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I wanted to make the point, Brother Mfanelo of ACUP. I wanted to make the point that I think what Brother Pigeon was referring to when he makes mention of the Pan-African Fund, he wasn't referring to funds available to national and international actors. He was referring to funds available to civil society. So for instance, ACUP is a civil society organization. So is CSG and other Pan-African organizations. We are civil society organizations. We do not control money. We do not control funds. What Brother Pigeon was referring to is for ordinary Africans to begin to fund their own civil society organizations. And that's what he was referring to. Of course, if, as you know, we believe in what the ACUP is doing, we support the ACUP with our philosophy and our ideological position. And if the ACUP does organize this march, we will support it. We will also be on the march. Yes, we will. And if, as a result, they make funds available for the conference, for the constitutional conference of the nationalities, we welcome that. But I think I just wanted to say that what Brother Pigeon was referring to is civil society. How do we, as civil society, get the funds we need from the many Africans who are working, but who are not contributing to anything to do with the actual work being done to unify, liberate, and develop Africa? Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, speaking on behalf of my brother Mfanelo here, he is seeing the power of us as principals to hold our agents accountable for the resources which they have and the control on our behalf. So I don't think the two are conflicting necessarily, because we need to fund ACUP and all of the other civil service organizations anyway, for us to get to where we can hold our agents' feet to the fire. Thank you. But you want to come in now?
Coco, can I speak myself?
I want to try.
Yeah, go ahead.
One more time.
Have that, please.
Permit me to speak for myself.
Can he speak now that he has the floor? Continue, okay. Because he is struggling for connection. You come in after him. Go ahead.
Do I have the floor? Okay, thank you. So one of the things that I hear coming up again is getting the funds to sponsor Congress and funds from a state. We currently have 3 states that are already funding Congresses. Zimbabwe is going to fund the 8th Pan-African Part 1 Congress. Uganda is already funding the 8th Pan-African Part 2 Congress, and Togo is going to fund the 9th Pan-African Congress. So one of the problems or the challenges that I keep seeing is each group kind of works in their silos and is recreating the wheel in different regions. So if these congresses are already going to be happening, organized by Pan-Africanists, you may agree with their agendas or you may not, but these things are going to happen already. So why not utilize them and bring all the Pan-African organizations and forces into those efforts already? Now that's on the one hand, and that's coming from AU member state recognition. So those of us who feel like it's worthwhile to try to engage and work with the AU, that's going on, and we can come into that. There are others who feel that the AU is in fact the problem, because the AU is an intergovernmental organization that has no sovereignty, and therefore it cannot solve our problems. On the far side of that is you have its opposite, which would be a single united continental government, one government for the whole continent. But, and this is coming from the Pan-African Federalist Movement perspective, to achieve that is so unrealistic right now at this point, because you have so many different levels of economic systems, political systems, social systems, that trying to put all those pieces together.
Okay. I hope he got your message, Brother Karanja, and he will change the settings to stop incoming video. Brother Sipiwe, do you want to follow what Brother Karanja has advised you to do? To go to settings and click on stop incoming video to reduce the usage of your bandwidth?
Yes.
Maybe that will resolve the issue.
Yes, I'm trying to do that.
Do you want to
do that on my settings?
Oh, do you want to do that, and then we give Brother Pigeon the floor? You go that.
Yes. Go. Yes. Yes, I'll yield.
Okay. Brother Higbin, come on board, my brother, and speak for yourself.
Thank you. In regards to the question that was directed to me, it will just be very common sense. SUP registered, whatever entity they registered, well, did they register for free? Did the government give them the money to register their organization? Was it not their resources that they pulled together to register? Did they go and mine gold somewhere and presented gold as a registration fee? So basically what I'm trying to talk about, that it will take resources, no matter how little it is, it will take resources. And whatever any activity, any movement of Pan-African movement is doing, it's not for an individual interest, it's for the community interest and for the people of Africa. And that's why there's a need for consciousness of people of Africa to own these organizations and these movements as part of their own benefit. It should not appear like some elite somewhere fighting for them. The masses must be won in the struggles to see actually that indeed this is for themselves. And if they need total control of themselves, they must fund themselves. I know even like, for example, political parties where people are the people who fund you, and then they call you as board of trustees, and they give you the direction of what you should do. Even in such parties like either SUP, if there's anybody who fund more than any other person, that some group of people, they fund us within the same leadership, then they'll tend to call the shots. But for you to make an organization be people-oriented organization, the people must have power to fund it and facilitate it, you see. And this is what you don't want to suffer, a state capture or a group capture or a deep state capture or elitism capture of our organizations, you see. The people must be given the ability and must be conscious enough to know that it is them to fund their revolution. There's nobody else who will fund for your revolution. And the people of diaspora and Africans, wherever they are, they must put their resources, wherever little it is, even if it is to help them print a banner for a campaign, or even if to help them to have a microphone, for them to move in the street one to the next street, even to mobilize their people to come or even give any reflection in whatever is required, it needs resources. And you don't tell me that the government will give resources to organize your own picketing, like they're planning a picketing for the same thing. I appreciate the concept and the gestures that the governments are giving for the Pan-African conference, as Brother Sifi have said, that are coming up. But you also must understand that not few or not many governments can be genuine enough to do this. Because even those governments, the money they're telling you they're using to help you facilitate your conferences, is also the money they borrowed from somewhere else to come and run their affairs. So indirectly, it's like you're using money that is still from your enemy, passed through your government, back to you. It is upon us to start feeling that we must have our sovereignty and fund our things. Let us come out and go there. You will realize that the organization that will be giving free ticketing to attend that conference, they will be sponsoring 1 or 2 or 3 organizations. An organization that you know very well are not pro-Africa, but because they're in business, they will give you a ticket to Brother Coco to attend there. Then you think that you're attending there independently. You know what happened in 1958 conference in Ghana, where even the negative forces came in the conference and pretended that they were for Africa. They even formed their so-called the covert missions in the name of African advancement. So these are things we must actually be conscious and be aware of, that we must make our own moves, our own revolution be funded by ourselves. And we must actually accept that. Failure to that, we will be captured by those who will be funding it. And it's it. He who feeds you, control you. Even if it's your mother who feeds you or your father who feeds you, he will control you. So he doesn't care that it must be a white man. Anybody who wants to have over dominance over you will tend to control. And this is what we must run away from. Failure to this will end up to a group of hands of another people. And so thank you very much, Brother Koko, because I'm seeing also the time is rushing. Permit me to stop there.
Thank you, my brother. But before you go, there is a question here. We need to try to achieve economies of scale. We have lots and lots of Pan-African movements, groups and stuff on the ground. How do we put all of those together? Because then it will be easy to raise funds and have a bigger punch.
Can I come in there then? Brother Coco, if I may answer that question. This conference, Brother Coco, the point of this conference we are holding now, that is why we are holding, that is one of the reasons we are holding this conference. Because we are saying that all of us must come and work together. So we acknowledge what Brother Sifiwe has said. And we are saying that we CSG, we are just an ideological and philosophical grouping. That's all we are. And we provide philosophy and ideology for all Pan-Africanists, even for the ACUP. That's what we are. We're not separate, but what we are saying is that what Brother Sifiwe has recognized is what we have also recognized, which you have mentioned. And that's why we are saying that there has to be economies of scale so that we all come together and stop inventing the wheel all the time. So brother, we are with you. That is why, that's one of the reasons for this conference, to invite Pan-Africanists to come and speak so that we all come up with action points. Why? So that we can identify which of us can do that or congregate around it, so that there is no reinvention of the wheel, there's no waste of resources. Thank you.
Brother Coco, just for me, like, one of the things we look after this is like the topics we say, beyond reparation. There are topics to do with education. There are topics to do with spirituality. There's mass party topics. There are so many other topics. And what we are looking forward to either in the next phase of the next year is now to try to bring all organizations dealing with reparations in one board and see now what is their budgeting, what do they want in order to achieve a reparatory complex or push for reparatory justice. Then if you mobilize resources, it's to that cause, not to one single organization. You go ahead and check which organizations are working in African spirituality. Bring them together into one committee. Let them work together. If there's any resources they need for, let them ask so that the resources go to the action, not to a pocket of an organization. Which organizations are dealing with mass party? SUP is here. Is there any other Pan-African like-minded organization? Let them sit together. What are they thinking of producing? What support do they need? Put it to that support, you see? So it's about now action-oriented support, where we first of all must come together and see what are we pushing in common, then mobilize resources for that. Because you see, like this conference, Brother Sifiwe saying, these conferences need to bring together various reparations organizations, putting their heads together, facilitating that, and asking for support for that, so that they can facilitate it. But we realize that maybe not all of them were together. Therefore, the government came in to help, you see. So it needs to be a platform of coordinating all efforts together. If you're in reparation, even if you're 100 Pan-African organizations, sit together in one forum. What is the framework and the blueprint for reparations? What support is needed? Channel that support. So basically, that's how we are thinking on mobilizing for support. Is support towards action, not support towards individual organization, action. And those organizations must come together because we are not going to be balkanized anymore. Let's coalesce along an objective. Then let's actually mobilize resources to achieve that common objective.
Thank you, comrade. I'm conscious of time, and I know your hand is up, Brother Greg, but let's come back to Brother Sifiwe to finish what he was saying. And I also recognize that the ladies are here, and I haven't heard their voices. Sister Ida, her hand was up, and I think Sister Myra. So please, Brother Sifiwe, and then followed by Sister Ida or Sister Myra, and then Greg.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize. The network here in Guinea-Bissau is very challenging. I agree with what the brother has said about we have to be conscientious about elite capture and state capture for what has essentially been a civil society African people-led movement. The upcoming Pan-African Congresses, right? At least the one in Togo, the 9th one, its origins come out of funding by the Open Society Foundation. And that is very problematic by many of us. But you have these events going on one side, and the question is will we utilize them to mobilize and galvanize the Pan-African community, since the resources are already being provided, to come and recapture it back from these elite state captures? If we don't show up in force, it's a fait accompli. Okay, so that's on the one hand. On the other hand, as an officer in the Pan-African Federalist movement, we understand that the AU is impotent because it has no sovereignty. On the other hand, trying to get a united one single government for the continent right now is impractical, because imagine you're trying to build one single plumbing system and you have parts with different standardized fittings. You're not going to be able to fit the pipes together and all that. So the Pan-African Federalist movement recognizes that currently the post-Berlin states that we have right now have negative sovereignty. They have independence, which is different from sovereignty, and they have a negative sovereignty, which means they're not able to implement what they want when they want without outside interference or despite that interference. So the middle ground is to say that these states mutualize that aspect of their sovereignty which they can't manage. So things like currency, things like patrolling the waters off the West African coast, things like military. We see that happening in the Sahel region with the Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali. So you see that states are taking sort of a measured sort of middle step, which is saying, we're not ready to completely abandon our post-Berlin Conference sovereignty, because those people, when they come into power, the last thing they want to do is give it up. So they're not willing to completely abandon it to one single continental government, but they are willing to mutualize aspects of sovereignty that are mutually beneficial. This is the Pan-African movement solution. So then the question is how do you move towards that? Well, we all know that sovereignty rests with the people. So once we get beyond ideological discussions, okay, and once again, 70% of Africa is under the age of 30 for now and going into the future. If you ask them, they're already sold on the concept of some kind of united African states. They don't need to be convinced. They're already sold on that. What's missing is the mechanism. And that mechanism is properly conducted referendums. To do that requires campaign machines. Those campaign machines have to have administrative structures in place before you do the mass mobilization, and again, funding. Now, if you look at what's happening, coming out of that Accra Reparations conference, they called for a global fund. So if you have that kind of entity calling for a global fund and it gets established, and the global fund that I hear being discussed or being proposed here, that gets established, and the other 6, 7, 8, or 9 major funds, now we have all these funds competing against each other, right? They're choices. So coming out of this 6th Pan-African Congress, it was decided that the overall #1 imperative was to establish a single global Pan-African Secretariat to serve the movement so that we could speak with one voice and we could coordinate through one single mechanism, so there wouldn't be duplication of efforts, there wouldn't be conflicting calendar scheduling issues. So 6th PAC failed to establish, but it was taken up at the 7th PAC in Kampala. It was up and running, but then went defunct when Tajuddin joined the Ancestors. So now Museveni in Uganda is saying, you know, next year is the 30th anniversary of the 7th PAC in Uganda. He's saying that he would like for part of his legacy to be one of those African leaders that was committed to Pan-Africanism. So he said, look, I've already donated a building and I'm willing to fund the Global Pan-African Secretariat, revive it, strengthen it, and fund it, and make it that coordinating mechanism that we're all calling for. Now, if we're all going to fight over whether it should be or shouldn't be and compete on what entity will be that coordinating mechanism, then until we resolve that, we're not going to be able to put into practice the campaigns that will go from ideology to direct action. Now, these young people, again, they're already sold on this idea of a united continental government. Mm-hmm. So it's about saying, here's a campaign machine that all formations can contribute to. The machine itself is not an institution or an organization. It doesn't compete with existing organizations or institutions. A campaign machine has an objective of calling together all of the formations into a Congress, right? And then collectively, under the spirit of Ubuntu, deciding, right, the steps going forward. So right now, 3 Congresses are on the table. Some others are being proposed. The historical imperative right now is, with 2024 coming up, how do we come out of 2024 with consensus? How do we harmonize all of these Congresses so that there is a coordinating mechanism between all the existing organizations? So let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. I can see some areas of opportunity for you to work with other groups, but I also see some conflict of interest there from ACUP. But Brother Mfana is here. He'll get in touch with you for you guys to sort of iron out how you're going to work together. Thank you. Sister Ida, did you want to say something? My time
Well,
is...
I didn't actually put my hand up, but I have to say that one of the things that I've noticed about conferences, like for instance, the Africa, the one in Accra, it was like it was suddenly up and running that it was going to happen. But they didn't invite some of the people you'd think they would invite. And yet they invited other people that you think, wow, how did they get in on this?
Mhm.
So I think that part of it is that a lot of people are not, if the conferences say the West Indies, they'll invite a certain group from the islands, you know, it's going to be University of West Indies, and all the people around there. The Accra one came out of nowhere, and the people they invited, you thought, oh, what have they got really to do? The people who were who were seeking reparations, a lot of them weren't invited. So it's a bit, some of the conferences are a bit hit and miss. And I think that's what we should be looking at, because we don't get to hear in advance quite often, apart from we've just heard about 2 or 3 that are coming up, but you don't usually seem to get to hear about them, would be my observation. So thank you for the conference. Thanks to everybody who's spoken today. And thank you.
Thank you, Sister Ida. Greg, and then Sister Myra. Greg, the floor is yours. If not, then Sister Myra, while Greg is preparing himself.
Thank you. Thanks for everyone who has contributed. I just want to come in and say I really support Brother Pigeon's point about resources. And I'm also glad that Brother Kwame differentiated between civil society groups and political groups like the ACUP. And I also agree with the points that Brother Pigeon made about independence, because we all know how the world works. You know, if someone's going to give you millions of dollars, then they're going to ask for, you know, they'll take over. They can dictate the messaging, they can dictate the propaganda. So it is important that we are independent in that way. And then the other thing is with our own resources, which, like Brother Pigeon said, we are not going to get from any government, because we are going against what they stand for, which is not true independence, which is what we're about. There are some projects, there are some plans that we talked about on this platform that we can start even thinking about and actually putting into action. For example, the education one. If, like Brother Vivian said, by the end of 2024, we have a curriculum and a syllabus that we can start presenting, then maybe if we had resources, we can even start pilot teaching centers, pilot education centers. And then when a party like SCUP gets into power, then we can say, hello, do you remember us? We have a syllabus ready. They'll ask us, obviously, as any responsible party that represents the people should do. Have you tried and tested it? And say, yes, we have, because we have our own centers. Maybe we have a few schools that we have been able to set up, and these are the this is the data that we can produce. So in that way, one that shows that we are all different groups, but we can work together. Some of us are civil societies, some people like SCUP are political parties. So we can bring our efforts together, and when the right time comes, we, with our resources, we have projects that we have tried and tested and therefore can then be pushed out or put into practice by our parties that are for us that have come into power. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The time now is 4 minutes after 9 GMT where I am, and I think it's past midnight in Kenya. It has been a useful conference, lots of discussions to reflect on, lots of ideas. So we'll have to go back and digest all of this. And at this point, I would like to give over to Pigbin or Brother Kwame, one of you, to close the conference and any further actions. Thank you for your time, contributions, comrades.
Yeah, thank you. I think Brother Pigeon will be in the best position to conclude the conference, as he has also led it in many ways. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Permit me to appreciate your presence, comrades. I think so many people have said before that we've been speaking too much. But the question is, have we acted too much? Because it's until we acted too much, then we can stop speaking too much. But actually, we are in a process to think, and not only to speak now, but to concert our efforts towards action. We believe plans are there, but it's only until we come together, so when we can know what is this person doing and this person doing, then we can interconnect to escalate actually our vision for a liberated, united, and developed Africa. So many of us have done a lot of things that so many of us don't know. But until we connect, it's only can know what is necessary. The purpose of this conference, today's conference, was actually to reflect on so many things and so many sectors of our livelihood as Africa that was to range from military up to education, to leadership, to common passport, to so many other things. Unfortunately, we did not get speakers for all of these topics. But what we are looking forward, actually in the next year, which is January, to end of that January 2024, is to come up with a common document in regards to strategy and demands for reparation, a continental approach. As Brother Sifu is saying, there's already a continental body of this. Can all reparatory bodies come and join that forum to ensure that they can produce an African position on continental reparation, repatriation, and restitution? We are still looking forward also to legal minds to sit together and analyze our laws and ensure that we produce a constitution that is an African constitution that actually is decoded and decolonized from white man's customary colonial laws, so that you can have more of like a customary that take into consideration to this. So these are part of the strategies that we'll be starting from next year, because we look forward to set up such committees that can now bring on board everybody in each sector. If it is in spirituality, we call upon all spirituality organizations across the continent who are doing anything to join that forum. Let them start building up, even if they're meeting monthly virtual, we will be willing to provide that virtual forum for them as a class so that they can meet. Then at the end of 1 year, they have gone through everything necessary, they have put their resources together, they have put their research together, and they produce a manual or a template that can lead the African spirituality that then can then be adapted in our schools to be the African spirituality to be taught to the next generation. How about education? How about military? How about governments, continent, telephones, technology? So this is the next stage, the stage of bringing these committees and setting up these committees and calling Africans to start coming in, start sharing their minds. And we hope and actually anticipate by the end of the year 2024, a day like this December, we'll be talking about approving and actually verifying a manual on each sector or a document on each sector, which is a Pan-African document. So this is the direction we have talked today. We are moving to action. But even in that action, we still have to talk and share more until we come up with a concrete document. So, comrades, I do appreciate your presence. I appreciate CSG for organizing and actually providing this platform. I appreciate your expertise, your contribution, and your thinking. It was never a talk for a talk. It was actually a thought for action. So may you all and may our ancestors bless our efforts. The challenges are ahead, and only if we work together, the more we continue to be balkanized in so many organizations, the more we stay and we behave like the current balkanized African state. We don't need that. We need a united front. And that means unity of purpose and unity of objective and action. So without wasting my time, I do appreciate this, and we will be actually ending our class here. And Brother Kwame will be playing for us as top-up song as we always do. As you part and depart from here, feel free to connect with us. We are having this CSG philosophy class on Thursdays, and on Saturday we are having a specific discussion on the unity of African intercontinental government. We have also started, of course, a class on Tuesday to teach Africans who are willing to learn Kiswahili as a common unified language for free. And those are the classes that we are running as a philosophy and a unity class. Feel free anytime to get in touch with us, and feel free to join us, and let's move together. We are here to work together for the common goal of Africa and for African welfare and African benefit. May you all have a blessed evening. Thank you.